the meditation on Lord Shiva. Dhyeya nityam mahesham rajata girinibham charu chandravatamsam ratna kalpojvalangam parashumurgavara bheti hastam prasannam padmasinam samantatstutam amaraganervayukittim vasanam vishwadim vishwabijam nikhila bhayaharam panchavaktram trinetram. We meditate eternally upon that great Lord who shines like a mountain of silver adorned with the crescent moon. His limbs are flashing as if ornamented. In his upper left hand he holds an axe. In his lower left hand he subdues the deer of the mind. He assures fearlessness and grants boons with the mudras of the Abhaya Mudra and the Varada Mudra with his two right lotus-like hands. He is seated in the lotus posture, absorbed in the deepest meditation. All about him, gods and other beings are praising him and hymning him. He is the ground upon which the universe rests and the seed from which it springs forth. That Nikhila, shining light, the dispeller of fear, with 5 faces and 3 eyes, we adore. Karpura Gauram Karunavataram Samsarasaram Bhujagendraharam Sadavasantam Hridayarvinde Bhavam Bhavani Sahitam Namami Kailasa Pirtasana Madhya Samstam Bhaktaischa-nandhyadhivisevyamanam Bhaktarti Davanalama Prameyam Dhyayed Umalingita Vishwarupam Paramparastham Gahanadanadim Lekam Nivishtam Bahudhaguhasu Sarvalayam Sarvacharacharastam Tvameva Shambhu Sharanam Prapadye Tvameva Shambhu Sharanam Prapadye. I take refuge in you alone, O Shambhu, you who are my Guru, who are non-different from Shiva, who is in essence Para, the supreme transcendent goddess, who in each and every moment is manifesting in the hearts of variously manifested beings. She is the ground in which all beings rest, and she is wholly immanent in the moving and unmoving. She is that transcendent reality beyond the abyss of transmigratory existence. She is beginningless and endless, and utterly non-dual. May this be an offering to that goddess Para. And now from the Vijnana Bhairava itself. Bhaya sarvam ravayati sarvago vyapako khile itti bhairava shabdasya santato charana jiva santato charana jiva. Om Bhairava is that terrifying sound that resounds in all things, as all things, that all-pervasive energy. By simply contemplating Bhairava and repeating the mantra Bhairava, one verily becomes Shiva. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Shivarpanamastu. Jai Shri Ram Krishna Jai Mahasarada Jai Guru. Om Gurubhyo Namaha Ganganeshaya Namaha. So as you know, coming up is one of the most important Shaiva celebrations of all time. In fact, it's one of the most important festivals in the entire tantric tradition. There, of course, Navaratri is very, very important, especially in the Shakta world. And there are about, as you know, maybe 2 at least, if not 4, if not 8 Navaratris a year that people tend to celebrate. So Navaratri means the 9 nights. Nava and Ratri, the 9 nights of the goddess Durga. And these 9 nights are a goddess festival, of course. And the original one was celebrated probably in March, like the one that's coming up, the March new moon. It's called Chaitra Navaratri or Spring Navaratri. And so the goddess festival is most likely in antiquity associated with the spring, with regeneration and with creation and with life and whatnot. But the story goes, Rama needed to go and win this war against Ravana because Ravana stole his wife and whatnot. You're familiar with that story in the Ramayana. So in order to do that, he has to worship Durga. Because Durga, or the Devi, is the goddess of Kshatriyas. Rama is a Kshatriya, a warrior. So he's about to go to war and needs to get the blessing of the goddess, but it's off season. It's like August or something like that. It's Sharath meaning fall. It's fall. But the Navaratri, the goddess festival, happens in the spring. So like now he's like, what am I going to do? And this is important because it shows you that even Rama, who is God himself, like the Avatara, even he values like these things. Like even he values astrological seasons and weathers, and he values timing, because there's a way in which things are done, and there's a logic and wisdom to that. So he feels like he wants to worship the goddess, and he feels like, I mean, I'm sincere, I want to worship her, but it's not the season to worship her. So he prays and prays and prays, not to her to help him in the war, but something like he prays for her to make it the season for him to do his worship. It's kind of like weirdly convoluted. Why doesn't he just pray to her directly? It's interesting. What he's trying to do is he's trying to perform a puja to Ma, but he's praying to Ma for the conditions to be perfect for that puja. It's a remarkable thing. So then she gives him another navaratri. She blesses him with this Sharat Navaratri. So these two are the main navaratris, the springtime one, Chaitra Navaratri, and the Sharat Navaratri. And interestingly, the one at the end of the year is way more popular. That's the one that we go big on. Like in Bengal, it's called Durga Puja or Durga Pujo. And that's like very important because it's near Diwali. It's Lakshmi Puja is the full moon after it. And then there's Diwali. And Diwali is also Kali Puja. So Lakshmi Puja, Kali Puja, and then Bhairava Jayanti. It all happens towards the end of the year. And you can see how like at the end of the year, when it's colder, when it's darker, it's more important that we celebrate. Like our response, as we often said, as human beings, our response to darkness, to despair, is to throw down, is to party, is to celebrate. This is our defiance. We light candles, we light lamps, we get together, we eat food, and we just have a merry time. If we're going to hell in a handbasket, we'll just say, wee, you know. Oh my god, Sai, everything just went dark all of a sudden on your screen. Shunya Devi plunged into the Shunya. Jai Ma, so good to have you here. Welcome. Yes. So this idea that these two Navaratris, these 9 nights of the goddess, there's also actually more of them. There's one we just had in January. We have winter time, there's one, and then summertime there's one too. So altogether there's 4 that we tend to celebrate, and some people even celebrate 8. So the Navaratri is of course a major tantric ritual. It's like the 9 nights of the goddess, so it's specifically devoted to Devi in all of her various forms. And the Gupta Navaratris, like the one we just celebrated, they have more to do with like the Mahavidyas, more esoteric, fiercer forms of the goddess, like Kali, Tara, Shodashri, Bhuvaneshwari, Bhairavi, Janamastaka, etc. But having said all of that, the thing to remember is that this tradition of the goddess might have preceded the Vedic period. It might have preceded Shaivism, certainly. Who knows where it comes from? But it was developed, it was articulated from within the tradition known as Shaivism. So although it might have existed in antiquity, way before any of the Vedic or Shaiva movements, like it's within Shaivism, the tantric world or agamic world of Shaivism, that these traditions were given like ritual expression, philosophical expression. It's when they were really brought into the Hindu mainstream, you could say, and they were really like deepened with the efforts of Vedic exegetes like Lakshmi Dhara and Bhaskara Raya and whatnot, just to make somewhat nerdy academic and historical point there. So it's within Shaivism, within the Shaiva tradition, that we get the Shakta religion. And again, I'm going to say like the Shakta religion maybe existed way before the Vedic civilization, maybe before 1900 BCE, way before Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, maybe like the Indus-Saraswati Valley civilization. Who knows? And maybe like I've said in other places, it's not just that it was there before the Vedic civilization, it might have also existed alongside the Vedic civilization. So these could be traditions practiced by Santals or other types of tribal communities that were outside the Vedic fold. Because a lot of the Vedic tradition happened within urban contexts. Even if they were pastoral, nomadic people or whatever, sooner or later you start to see very complex societies, urban societies, and maybe these Shakta traditions, the goddess traditions, developed outside of that fold, maybe in the forests or in smaller communities with different value systems and a different way of looking at the world and whatnot. So you see this kind of tantric Vedic tension maybe, even outside the conversations we have about Shaivism. But we can't deny that Tantra is the revelation of Lord Shiva. And of course, after that, we get like Buddhist Tantra and Vaishnava Tantra and a lot of different kinds of Tantra, Jain Tantra. But the first Tantra, arguably, as we learn with some modern scholarly research and new evidence coming to light, the first Tantra came from within Shaivism. And the Shaiva Tantras will naturally turn into the Shakta Tantras. We go from the Shaiva Agamas to the Raudra Agamas to the Bhairava Agamas. So we get like 3 different phases of Shaiva revelation, and the one that we tend to like maybe, I don't know, focus on the most. Not to say it's the best. In fact, it's not the best in this sense that it is preceded by some other realizations first, but it's the culmination, you could say. Not necessarily the best, but sort of the outcome, if you will, of a lot of this, and that's the Shakta Tantras, but they happen within the Shaiva folds. These are called Bhairava Agamas in one sense. So the one we're going to study tonight, it's called the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. It is, according to some lists, included in the Shakta Tantras. So although the word Bhairava refers to like the male form of Shiva, you have to remember that this is Shiva empowered. Bhairava is like the fierce form of Shiva. So Shiva, as we often think of him, is like Sada Shiva, meditating, peaceful, he's Shanta, full of quiescence. But that Shanta Shiva or Sada Shiva is also enlivened by the Shakti. And the essence of Shiva is the Shakti. Shiva Svabhayavaha iti Shaktihi. The very essence of Shiva is verily Shakti. So Bhairava is Lord Shiva empowered. Fierce Shiva. So this Bhairava, the teaching of Bhairava is naturally going to be a very Shakta flavored teaching, a very Kaula teaching. And those words we'll talk about later. So the Kaula Shakta Shaiva world is what the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra represents, and it's got philosophies that are representing the more non-dual, more esoteric, more goddess-oriented traditions. So when we say Shaktism, we don't mean something that's outside of Shaivism, although we can certainly admit that there are Shakta traditions that are not Shaiva. But generally when we think about the Shri Chakra or Shri Vidya traditions, we think of Kaujika or Guya Kali traditions in Nepal. We think of course, Purvamnaya, the Vijnana Bhairava is mainly within the Purvamnaya stream. And again, almost all the modern forms of Devi worship, it all is articulated within the Shaiva agamic world. And of course, a lot of that was developed in South India, like in Tamil Nadu. A lot of the Kali stuff is developed in Kerala. And of course, a lot of this was developed in Tamil Nadu because of the reign of the Vijayanagar kings. The Vijayanagar main king that we think about is Krishna Raya. Krishna Deva Raya. So Krishna Deva Raya is a very, very powerful king, very famous king, Shaiva king in the south, in Tamil Nadu. And there he founded a lot of like very important centers of learning. And during his reign, there were some important commentators. Like there was a Lola Lakshmi Dhara, and more importantly for us, the Bhaskara Raya commentaries. And you'll see that like what's happening here is Bhaskara Raya and Lakshmi Dhara, they're attempting to bring these somewhat non-Vaidika traditions, like the Tantric traditions, into the Vedic world. So they're like looking at the Atharva Veda. For instance, Bhaskara Raya is like plumbing the Atharva Veda to show how the Shri Vidya tradition can be traced back to the Atharva Veda. Then there's like this Bhavana Upanishad. Bhavana Upanishad, the word Upanishad already links it to the Vedic tradition. So you can see these exegetes like Bhaskara Raya and others in the 15th, 16th century like working really hard, the 18th century working really hard to bring these works into into the Vedic world, into the mainstream Vedic world, into the courts of like kings and whatnot, which allows these traditions to really flourish because they're getting state patronage. So the writers and the teachers of the tradition have the leisure to really develop text, padatis, ritual manuals, which are then sponsored by the state so they can be accessed by other Sanskrit literate people and whatnot. So this is why it's so confusing, because when we think of Kali or we think of Durga, we're thinking of Devi, and we think of Shiva, we're thinking of like this male form, like a patriarchal, not in the pejorative sense, but a patriarchal, more orthodox, more Vaidika tradition. But in fact, it's incredibly complicated because Devi and Shiva are non-different. It's a matter of emphasis, and the more non-dual you get, the more transgressive you get, the more immanent oriented you get. The more immanent oriented you get, the more Devi you get. But it's still Shaivism. It's still Shiva. But Shiva understood from within a Kaula context. So now Shiva becomes Akula, like the void, and then she becomes Kula, which means Shiva embodied. So we're just talking about Shiva. Shiva transcendent is Shiva. Shiva immanent is Shakti. But it's still Shiva. It's still the absolute nature of reality. So again, now we're moving beyond iconographic representations of gods and goddesses. When we mean Kali, when we mean Shiva, we mean something like Brahman, but with certain technical nuances that make it different from the word Brahman. So we're like talking about a different kind of Hinduism here. Not entirely, but somewhat, than the one that is popularly known on the internet. So when we say Kali, we're referring to like the words Bhairava, Shiva, Kali, Parameshwara, Para, Vani, Vak. These are all interchangeable. It doesn't matter. At this point, these words don't matter at all. And they're all interchangeable. That's the idea. So that's exciting, right? Like, and Abhinavagupta, one of the most important masters in the Shaiva world. Remember, he's representing not just the Kaula, Tantric, like Bhairava Agama stuff. He's also representing Shaiva Siddhanta and the whole spectrum. Although his allegiance is to the non-dual stuff, he's representing the whole spectrum, right? That's important to remember. But according to Abhinavagupta, in chapter 4 of his Tantra Sara, like all these words mean the same thing. And he lists a bunch of them, and Kali is one of them. There's also Chandika or Chamunda or something like that. And there's Vani. Vani means the goddess of speech, Saraswati, right? So Vani, Bhoga, Drik, like there's all these words. Urmi is a beautiful word. Wave. Urmi, Vak, Bhoga means enjoyment. Chandika, the fierce one, or Chamunda. Kali, the black one. All these are all names that Abhinavagupta says means the exact same thing. And so when I say Bhairava, when I say Shiva, when I say Kali, we're referring to the ultimate nature of reality. So the Vijnana Bhairava is the teaching, the wisdom, Vijnana, the special knowledge, jnana of Bhairava, the teaching of the fierce Shiva. But by this we just mean the teachings of Shakti, the teachings of Shakta Tantra or Kaula Tantra or non-dual Tantra. So sometimes it's called non-dual Tantra, Para Advaita or Paramadvaya. Abhinava Gupta likes the word Anuttara Trika. These are all various technical Sanskrit terms to describe the kind of philosophy that we're going to look at today. And it's a very refined and profound kind of philosophy. It's so refined that it's laughably simple. Unbelievably simple, and you can realize the ultimate nature of reality here itself without doing any rituals, without chanting any mantras. It's more about a recognition than an attainment, and that's what the Kaula Tantras seem to represent. A direct path, a path emphasizing non-duality. Dear Elizabeth, Jai Mata Rajeshwari. So it's really important to note that everything that can be attained in spiritual life can be attained in the next hour together. There's nothing special that we need to do. There's no mantra that we need special diksha for. There's no ritual that we need to perform specially. There's nothing to get even. It's just something to reclaim, to recognize, to be reminded of. So that's the kind of loving nature of the Divine Mother. It's unconditional love because you are already perfect. And it's just a matter of recognizing that. So you can mythologize this and you can put this in the Puranic sense, in that Mother just like loves you infinitely. There's nothing you need to do to earn her love. It's just automatically given. Similarly, there's nothing you need to do to become more spiritual. There's nothing you can do to add to your spirituality, and there's nothing you can do to diminish your spirituality, because your spirituality is not something you have, it's what you are. And so the claim here is that you are Shiva. And if you want, we can say that differently. You are Kali, or we can say you are Bhairava, or you are Void, or you are Brahman, or whatever. Who gives a fuck what the end of the you are sentence is? It's just you are. But the important thing is that you must be understood properly. So the you is defined by that which comes after the are. So we say Tattvam Asi, that tat is what we have to define. And so the Tattvam Asi means thou art that. Asi, thou. So Asi is that, are, and Tvam is thou, and tat is that. So tatvamasi means thou, that thou art, or you are that. But like the tat has to be explained. Again, the tat is not something other than the tvam. So you don't actually have to explain the tat, you just have to explain the tvam. So who gives a fuck about Bhairava, Kali, Shiva? Like that's the point, right? Like the names don't really matter, but they matter in a cultural sense, a kind of lineage sense. Because when we say Shiva, we say Bhairava, there's a difference, there's a nuance. And the word Bhairava is pointing to the same reality as the word Shiva, but with a bit of nuance as to what that reality is like. Just like the word Brahman and the word Paramashiva sort of mean the same thing, but they don't, because, there are technical, philosophical differences between those two words. But they are referring to the same reality. The thing to understand here is that these are different readings of the same reality, or more and more esoteric readings of the same reality. Not necessarily higher or better readings. I shouldn't even use the word culminating reading, but just different readings. And so we're going to look at now the Vijnana Bhairava, which is a particular reading on the ultimate nature of reality, and it's a tantra in that Lord Shiva is going to reveal it to us. Lord Shiva here is called Bhairava, the fierce Shiva. And this Bhairava is going to reveal it, it seems, to his wife, to his consort, Parvati. So it looks like Parvati is the one learning from Lord Shiva, so he's the guru in this context, and she's like the Shisha. And she's the only one who can actually receive this teaching, because again, she's inseparably him, so he's teaching it to himself. And so when he's dialoguing with Shakti, it's like he's just thinking about it with himself. And she is the ability for him to think about it, to contemplate it. And so we get into very nice and technically nuanced conversations about the distinction between Shiva and Shakti. The only thing to remember here before we get into the text is that there is no distinction between them. There is no distinction between Shiva and Shakti any more than there is a distinction between heat and fire. There is no fire without heat, and yet heat is the potency of fire. It's the property of fire to be hot. Similarly, it's the property of Shiva to relish himself. She is his self-relishing. She is his poetic rapture. We call her chamatkara. Exactly. There might not be any reason to make a distinction. That's the idea. It's like Kali, Shiva, Brahman. It's like perhaps, as Sonoma is suggesting, perhaps these distinctions aren't important. And when we look at the text, you'll see that they are obfuscated. Any distinction that we want to make, the text quickly blurs. And ultimately we realize, actually that's the goal of the text, to blur and diminish and destroy all distinction between anything. Between me and you, between me and the table, between Shiva and Shakti, between matter and spirit, between pure and impure, between high and low, between right and wrong. Like everything is just understood to be one thing. It's all homogeneously Shiva through and through, or Kali through and through, or Brahman through and through. But I prefer the better word, you. It's all you through and through. The words Shiva, Kali, Brahman, the problem with these words is they point you to a culture and to a tradition, and they point you to something outside of yourself. The culture, the tradition, and the deities are all just mirrors meant to reflect back to you what is already true of you. So the word you, Tvam, is maybe more appropriate than the word Kali or Shiva or Bhairava. So that's why in the text, we get the word consciousness, chit, consciousness. And that's important because Bhairava is defined, as you'll see in a few moments, as the bliss or the relish of one's own inner self-experience. Swa anubhavananda iti Bhairava. Bhairava is the antaha, the inner, swa, self, anubhava, experience, and the bliss of that. The fullness, the innate fullness, relish and bliss. Bharita. Bharita means to be full. So the bharita of bha, of light. So light being here defined as a metaphor for consciousness. So light, bha, abhasa, or bhairava being bha, and rava meaning sound. So the resonance, or the mantra, which is aham, I am, and the light, which is your experience of I amness, which is the light of pure non-dual consciousness, that is called Bhairava, and it relishes itself. It's innately full, and its experience is one of fullness. Just it contains the entire universe. So therefore, that's Bhairava. So here, we're not even using the word Bhairava to refer to a deity. The deity is the self, Chaitanya Matma. The whole text is about you, and you in the deepest possible way. So the teaching does not need to be puja-fied. You don't need a ritual for it. It doesn't need to be mantra-fied. It can be mantra-fied. There's a mantra here that we'll learn. But it's not important to chant that mantra. You can't chant it actually because you are it. You are that mantra. You can't do any particular puja because any action is interchangeable with every other action, since all actions occur in consciousness, by consciousness, for consciousness, through consciousness. So what is not puja? Everything is puja. You can kill someone on a battlefield and that's puja. You can be killed on a battlefield and that's puja. That's what Sri Arjuna learns in the Bhagavad Gita. That there's nothing like especially more sacred about offering flowers, incense, or fire at the altar. In fact, you could just eat a steak sandwich and that would be equally puja if you did it with the right understanding of what you're doing. And even if you did it with the wrong understanding, it doesn't change anything. It's still Shiva pretending not to be Shiva. That's the beauty of it. Like, you have everything that you want and you can't not have it because you are it. So even when you pretend not to have it, it's still yours. It's still you. So what the fuck? Relax. That's actually the whole teaching. It's like, what the fuck? Relax. It's fine. Everything is fine. You're free. Even when, and especially when, you pretend not to be. That's the beauty of the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. And because Śiva Rātri is coming up, I want to look at it today. And I want to do maybe 3 things, time permitting. Yes, that is bliss, in fact. The definition of bliss is this. It's called Swatma Vishranti, to repose in one's own essence nature. There's nothing to do, nowhere to be, nothing to change, nothing to take away or remove, nothing to add. What is here now is absolutely full. And the recognition of that is called Ananda or Bharata. So when we say you are Ananda Bhairava or Ananda Bhairavi, we're saying you are that fierce, empowered Shiva who recognizes its, not his or her, but its own essence nature, which is synonymous with bliss. So that's the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra in a nutshell. You are Shiva, you always were, you always will be. And what does it mean to be Shiva? To be filled with the poetic rapture and delight of reposing in your own essential nature, which is all the time blissful fullness. Yeah, what the fuck? Relax. Yes, that's the mantra, as Neelama is pointing out. The mantra is what the fuck? Relax. Yes, and in fact, let's look at the definition as per the text. I want to look at the Devanagari with you, look at the Sanskrit, and we'll see what the text itself is saying. So we'll go to the primary source. The thing to remember here is that there are navaratris, that's where I was going with this. There are navaratris and they're about the goddess, they're about Devi. Now, as I was saying, that Devi here in this context represents Shiva in this non-dual sense. So within Shaivism, we get the Shakta traditions, like the Jayadratta Yamala Tantra, and we get, of course, all the important Sri Vidya texts like Bhaskara Raya's Bhavavan Upanishad commentary, like we get the Parashurama Kalpa Sutra, like there's all this literature that we get. Important literature because it happens from within the Shaiva world. A lot of it is developed in the court of King Avanti Varman up in Kashmir, so that's like a very important time for the flourishing of Shaiva traditions, Vamakeshwari Mata Tantra. In the south, we have the Vijayanagar kingdom, and of course King Krishna Deva Raya. These are all very important kingdoms because it saw, during these times, these reigns, we saw a lot of state patronage, which meant a lot of Shakta texts are becoming publicly and popularly available now. In Devanagari, of course, in Sanskrit. Oh, sorry, not necessarily in Devanagari. In Sanskrit, but the scripts are different. Like in Kashmir, it was in Sharada script. In Tamil Nadu, sometimes Grantha script and different scripts. But anyway, all of that aside. Bhaskara Raya is interesting because he's a South Indian settled in Varanasi. So he's writing and commenting in Varanasi in North India, but he's South Indian. He came from that world. Okay, so having said all of this, Navaratri is very important. It's a super tantric ritual to worship the goddess over the course of 9 nights. We just had a Navaratri. But having said all of that, it all can be traced back to the main celebration of Shaivism. And without even considering Tantra or the agamic kind of revelation of Lord Shiva, Shaivas all over the world. And of course, there's no Shaiva that's not a Tantrika to some extent, because all their temples are built based on the agamas, on the tantras. Everything that they know about Shiva is tantric, but it's not to say that every Shaiva is practicing tantra. You see, but you can't get away from tantrism if you are interacting with Shaiva traditions, but that doesn't mean you do tantra. In fact, there's a bad rep around tantra, even though it's the very thing that the priests do in the temples. People themselves are afraid to do it. They don't mind if priests do it. They themselves are afraid to do it. Even in my very own family, where my grandfather would perform some of these rituals, there are still people in my extended family who will see me do homas and pujas and things like that, and they'll get a bit scared. Because again, it's like one of those ritualistic traditions, like practices, they tend to be somewhat controversial even amongst Shaivas, whose tradition is not only the origin of Tantra, but whose tradition is suffused with Tantrism. In every temple, you get Tantric imagery. The Puranas around Shiva are intensely Tantric. Like, there's no way to get away from Tantra in Shaivism, but that doesn't mean that every Shaiva practices Tantra. That being said, every Shaiva will revere Śiva Rātri. It's the main event in the entire tradition, and it happens every month, technically. And there's a Shivaratri at the end of every moon cycle. So on the 28th day of the moon, which is the day just before the new moon, the Chaturthi, it's called Krishna Paksha Chaturthi, meaning the 14th day of the waning moon cycle. Technically, that's called the Masik Shivaratri, the monthly Shivaratri. Whereas there's one major Shivaratri that happens once in the Vedic calendar year, and that's the one that's coming up now, the Magha Maha Shivaratri. In the Vedic calendar month of Magha, we have this great Shivaratri. So it's of all the months, this is the best month for this observance. And that has to do with some astrological stuff too. And I'm not going to get into that because I don't know very much about that. I'm not versed too much in Jyotish. But it has something to do with outer planets, with Neptune and of course Uranus and whatnot. So with Uranus. So the thing is, the 3rd of February, I think it saw Uranus go direct in it was already direct, but it went into Taurus, which is interesting. I was thinking about that Vrishabha, Taurus, by tropical, but in Taurus being Vrishabha, being the Nandi, the bull, it's a place of stability. So like a cow is usually very solid. You see, it's when it's sleeping in Varanasi, when it's sitting there, there's kind of solidity to it, stationariness to it. Nandi, and Nandi is Lord Shiva's Vahana. Lord Shiva is a Sadashiva figure. He has this bull with him. Vahana, meaning his vehicle. He rides Nandi. And of course, Parvati also rides Nandi. And the two of them sit on the bull together. So this bull, it's Vrishabha, the Taurus sign, and it represents a lot of grounding and stability. And then Neptune, notice Neptune and Uranus, they're outer planets. They're like Vichitra planets. So like Lord Shiva, he's an outsider deity. Just now speaking Puranically, philosophy and non-dual esoteric tantric ideas aside, just coming to the philosophy and the Puranic revelation, we hear about Shiva as this like outsider. He's weird, Vichitra. He's strange. Nobody really likes him because nobody really understands him. Only the people who get him, like Ganas and Bhutas and Parvati and whatnot. So he's usually sitting outside in the Smashan or in Mount Kailash by himself. Lord Shiva is often found alone, unlike some of the other deities who are often attended to by a retinue. Lord Shiva is one of those if you know kind of deities. He's hard to understand, and so like that his influence can be a bit disturbing because it's almost like coming from beyond the scope of what we understand. So it's far beyond the pale of humdrum mundane society. Given this, people are often afraid of Shiva because his energy can be a bit erratic and uncertain and destabilizing. So when Lord Shiva comes, it's nice to have Nandi because that stabilizes him. So when you think of Shiva and Nandi, you're getting this primordial sort of Shaiva idea that all craziness, all outsiderness, all weirdness, all eccentricity, all energy must have a container. In this case, Lord Shiva himself is considered to be the Shakti, the Neptunian or Uranic kind of influence, whereas Nandi is considered to be the Shiva. So the Shiva Shakti idea where Shiva is the container and Shakti is the energy that flows in that container. So Shiva can be understood as Shakti here. He's the Neptunian influence. So now Neptune has gone into Aries. So for the next 14 years, Neptune is going to be in Aries, right? Like doing whatever it does in Aries. And Uranus in Taurus, it just made me think of Shiva and Nandi. And how like Shiva on Nandi is very much like Kali dancing on Shiva. The idea of energy contained. And so you can't really think of Devi without Shiva. And you ought not think of Shiva without Devi. The two terms are distinct in one sense and non-distinct in another sense, almost like Abheda Bhed. It's hard to say they're one because there are two seeming aspects of them, but you can't say they're two either any more than you can say fire and heat are separate. So is there a sense in saying fire and heat? Yes. Heat is somewhat different from fire, but not really. You can't think of fire without the heat. Can I say white milk? I don't have to. If I say milk, I already imply whiteness. If I say fire, I already imply heat. You can't think of milk necessarily, and I don't mean chocolate milk or strawberry milk. I just mean milk. And if I say milk, you probably will think of the white milk. I have to say chocolate milk to specify that it's a different kind of milk. And even then, that's not really milk. I just mean milk in its essence when it comes from the cow's udder. Notice it's just white. You just automatically think of the color white. So can I say milk and its whiteness? Yes. So I can say Shiva Shakti, Shakti and Shaktiman. So there are two, but those two are actually two aspects of one. And by thinking of them as two, it's honest to my experience. But by thinking of them as two, ultimately I transcend that two-ness and get a oneness that doesn't erase the two-ness. So it's a very dynamic oneness. You see, the moment we erase the two-ness and we in favor of oneness, we lose dynamism. But the moment we maintain two-ness and not oneness, we lose non-duality, we lose wholeness. The fact that we have both wholeness on one hand and yet a dynamism on the other, that's itself Shaktism, the dynamism of these ideas. So it can't be really reconciled in the mind. How wonderful. And that's the exercise of just thinking about Shiva and Shakti as one, but then also making comments like this, like there's Nandi, the bull, and there's Shiva who rides Nandi, which is an early and primordial form of like Shakti dancing on Shiva and whatnot. Okay, having said all of this, Shaivism is really important to understand because you can't understand Shaktism, you can't understand Devi traditions without rooting yourself in the Shaiva Siddhanta. Because it's in the Shaiva Siddhanta that the early foundational ideas, which would later develop into the Devi traditions, or rather, which would be used to articulate the non-Vedic Vedic traditions, those are all there in the Shaiva Siddhanta world. So, Shivaratri then is so important, maybe even more important than Navaratri, I would argue, because you can't get Devi without Shiva. Shiva is essentially Devi, and also you can't get Shiva without Devi, according to other sense. So, maybe we should say this, they're equally important. So whether you're Shakta, whether you're Shaiva, at the end of the day, you have to admit if you're practicing in these traditions in any serious capacity, if you're doing japa, reciting a mantra, or if you're chanting stotrams, like hymns, if you're doing puja or homa, ritual worship or fire worship, and certainly if you're studying texts like this, you're a tantrika. And as a tantrika, you have to recognize that tantra started in Shaivism and later spread into other traditions, and therefore, Shivaratri, for tantrics, for shaktas, for Kaula practitioners, like it's the most important night, arguably. Because it's just Shiva's night, you know. And all of this, none of this would be here without Shiva, arguably. We're all Shaivas first. We argue, at least. I mean, not necessarily, but you have to say. If you're, and by the way, one of the names of Devi in the Kali Sahasranam is Shaiva. She's a Shaiva. Kali is of course a Shaiva because Kali loves Shiva and she's obsessed with Shiva. She's devoted to Shiva. And who is Shiva? He's a Shakta. So it's ridiculous to say I'm a Shakta, I'm a Shaiva. It's like saying fire and heat are different, or water and wetness is different, or like milk and whiteness is different. So that's why I just say we're Shaivas, because it's in the Shaiva tradition, in Sri Vidya, in the Kalika kind of traditions, Guya Kali traditions or Dakshina Kali traditions, in the Paschimamnaya, what is Kaubjika, typically called Kaubjika traditions, and of course in the Purvamnaya, which is the Vijnana Bhairava. All of these are Shakta traditions, Kaula traditions. They're all about the goddess, but they're developed within Shaivism by Shaiva masters whose main devotion started with Shiva. So Shivaratri is coming up, and because it's coming up in 2 weeks, it's the day after Valentine's Day this year, I thought we should do some important work. And some of the most important work we can do is to review the Vijnana Bhairava, because there are a lot of things in there that would be helpful for going into Shivaratri. Yes, exactly. So instead of doing a puja class today, I thought we could go directly to the Vijnana Bhairava, because last week we spent the whole 3 hours talking about puja. So I wanted to this time spend more time talking about the Vijnana Bhairava, just to kind of balance out the 2 weeks. And if we have some time left over, I think it would be cool to look at just the introduction to the Swami Brahmananda biography, Eternal Companion, because it tells us a lot about Shiva and Shakti and whether or not these distinctions are even important. Okay, having said all of that, I just want to plunge right into the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra now and just go over the first few verses, which will explain the philosophical outlook around the word Shiva, because it's very important to understand that the word Shiva here does not necessarily mean a proper noun. We're not talking about necessarily a deity in the sense of like a being within a pantheon of other deities. The word Shiva or Shiva, it's a noun, but not necessarily a proper noun, and it just means auspicious or blessed. So it's the good capital G. And here the good in this sense is the non-dual, the whole or the complete or the full, the one that is the reconciling principle. Yes, Shiva, the absolute. Exactly. The Bhairavi Nicola is pointing out. This is our Ishta actually. Shiva is our Ishta. And we read Shiva as Shakti. Shakti is a reading of Shiva. But by the word Shiva, we just mean the blessed, the auspicious, the absolute. And of course, what could be more blessed and auspicious than the Absolute? The Absolute is absolutely blessed, absolutely auspicious. And so we're talking about that, which some call Aula, some call the Father, some call Yahweh, some call Brahman. Here we're just choosing to call it Shiva. And remember, it's not better or worse than any other reading, but it is a very unique and specific reading of reality. So having said that, the word Shiva is going to be defined in this text in many different ways. And the word Shakti is also going to be defined. So we're really just like working with these two terms, Shiva and Shakti. Ultimately, we know they're inseparable and they're going to be used interchangeably to obfuscate any possible sense that they're different. But holding them together and noticing some nuances between the two words is also going to be very helpful. So coming to the text then, here we go. The Vijnana Bhairava is right here. Let me just check on it. Yeah, so coming to the text, I want to introduce you first to these like Kaula Sutras. Hold on, sorry, scroll so quickly here, but I want to show you these opening verses here. These are from a text called the Kaula Sutras, the aphorisms on Kaula or Kaula Marga. So we consider ourselves Shaktas, but as Shaivas practicing with Shakti, we're also Kaulas. And so it's kind of interesting because these days you have a non-Vamachara Devi tradition, which is awesome. I think a lot of that has to do with Lakshmidhara and interpreters of the Shakta traditions that were maybe more Vaidika and maybe more interested in presenting like better PR for the goddess. But often in the goddess kind of traditions, you get slightly less Vaidika, less orthodox interpretations of religion with cultural practices that maybe are not mainstream or sometimes transgressive in the mainstream. They're not necessarily transgressive to the ones who practice them, but they were definitely transgressive when they started entering into the Vaidika mainstream. So the Kaula Sutra then, Kaula has a link to Kali. These are Kali traditions. And these are Shaivas who worship the goddess, Shiva as Shakti. And Shiva Shakti primordially can be called Kali or Chandika or Vani or Vak Devi or whatever. Like as Abhinava points out in the Tantra Sara, there's so many names for the same Devi. So whatever you want to call Devi, Shakti or Adya Shakti or Para Shakti or whatever, the ones who worshipped her were called Kaulas. And sometimes they call them Vamacharis or whatever. But Kaula, I think, is more appropriate. Kaula Marga. So these sutras are from the primordial texts. The primordial being like foundational text on the tradition. And notice it's all about Guru Yoga. Because if the text says that Shiva is immanent, then the Guru becomes very important. Because the Guru is an immanent, real world representation of the highest divinity. Now, that's complicated in one sense. Because in what sense is something immanent, something physical, something within time and space, capable of representing that which is non-physical? How can matter represent spirit? And how can the temporal and the spatial come to represent that which is atemporal and aspatial? What's the possibility with Kula with regards to Akula, with the immanent, with regards to the transcendent, Apara to Para? So this has to be defined. The Guru has to be defined. Especially given that Shiva in the Shaiva Siddhanta tradition is also seen as like the primordial Guru, Adi Guru or Adinatha or Sri Adinatha. Now, this is important because it's the stuff we talked about with Yoga and Sankhya. It's like our understanding of God is as the first Guru. So God is Shiva, blessed, because the most blessed thing that can happen to you is that you get a teaching that reminds you of that which makes you happy and fulfilled and whole, that which frees you from suffering. So the blessing of being taught something, of being given wisdom, is considered the highest blessing. That blessing comes from the Guru, but the Guru here is only Shiva. And so Shiva, even in the Shaiva Siddhanta, even in the dualistic reading of reality, there even God is considered to be a Guru. And the Shaiva Siddhanta, because of very jnana-oriented tradition, has great reverence for Guru. Guru Yoga becomes so important. The Acharya, the teacher of the tradition, is very central. Now, we're going to redefine the Guru, which is very interesting. We're going to reinterpret the word Guru. Literally the first verse of the Kaula tradition, the first verse of Shaktism as a whole is about the Guru. So Guru Yoga is the primordial practice in Tantra. And after all, you can't learn any of the other practices, puja or homa or japa. You can't get the tradition unless you get it through a Guru. The Guru is here interpreted to be a person, typically, an acharya, a lineage holder. But now what the Kaula Sutra is going to do is it's going to say, no, actually the Guru is not that. The Guru is not a person. The Guru is... it's important to also say that there's only one Guru. So I would translate this verse as, there's only one Guru. And of course we know the Guru is God, but before we even get to God, we have to say something else. The Guru is actually the unavachinnam or avachinnam, the unbroken, kramayata marichi. So marichi means like a ray, kramayata means a sequence, the word sankramana means transmission, and the word ovali means something like lineage or parampara, like disciplic succession, but in fact it also means tribe. So it can mean family or tribe. Remember, there's the Kaula Sutra, which is the adjectival form of the Sanskrit word kula, which can mean both the body or embodiment, or it can mean family. So the word kula means family. So here there's like a family structure being stressed. And that's interesting because a lot of times these teachings will be passed down within the family. And not only that, when one is giving this teaching to someone outside of their biological family, the Sangha considers themselves to be a family of spirit. Kind of like the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb idea. So it's sort of like spiritual adoption as idea almost, but not even that. It's like the idea that this would have happened traditionally probably within a tribe or within a community. So there's like almost a tribal idea here, like an idea like it's more about families and communities and structures like this. So what is the guru then? The guru is not any particular person. If anything, the guru is like a community. And that's what the point I was making in Denver is like the idea of guru mandala. The guru is what happens when two or more are gathered in my name. A Christ idea. Wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there I am also. The guru is a mandala. So when certain people come together, it forms like a network of energies, and that network of energies becomes mutually enforcing and spiritually nourishing for all those people present in that space. And that doesn't mean there can't be a bindu, there can't be like a frequency holder or something like that, but that energy won't work unless a particular arrangement or sequence comes together. So the word ovali means like a yantra or a mandala or something like that. But it's not just that. It's not just about the mandala. Who cares for a wire if it's not able to transmit electricity? So the word marichi means like ray. It's a ray of transmission, sankramanam, and that sankramanam flows in a sort of sequence, a krama. So the Kalikula can sometimes also be called the krama tradition. So the krama means a process or a sequence. So the unbroken or uninterrupted or unimpeded or constant flow of transmission throughout the lineage, that's the guru. The wire is not the guru, the electricity is the guru. And the wire is really just like a network of wires. Like it's a consortium of energies brought together, and then the energy flows. So you immediately get the idea of the Sri Chakra, you get the idea of dynamism, of Shakti, but you get a very practical idea that there's something to be got from the guru. And that doesn't mean necessarily knowledge. And this is where we get one of the most important ideas in spiritual life, that spirituality is not taught, it's caught. That's the most important idea. That it's not about what we learn conceptually, but rather how that conceptual structure, which by the way is not necessarily dispensed, but in some traditions not necessarily kept either, but that conceptual structure, it's not about what it awakens in the mind, it's about what it awakens in the entire being, in the heart. So then when one is given a mantra or one is given an idea or a concept, it should come to life. And what that means is that person should receive some kind of enthusiasm or some kind of inspiration or some kind of encouragement from that idea or from that mantra. If the mantra is just a thought construct, then it doesn't necessarily lead to any like follow through. The person's life might not change. Their behaviors might not change. Their experience of themselves or of the world might not change. And that's the point. Yes, infection, contagion. There's something contagious, ideally, about the spirit of spirituality, and that's what's being transmitted. There's an enthusiasm, an inspiration, a contagion. There's some kind of energy that's being passed. This is where it gets very mysterious, because here a mystical claim is being made, that the way one car will jumpstart another car, in that same way, this transmission is given. Like a car that's running can give it to another car. But what is given is the energy, not necessarily the car. Yeah, and here's the thing, right? There's some place from which it comes, and that's Shiva. Shiva, now we're going to define what that looks like. Shiva / Shakti, whatever. So that place from which it comes is the source, and ideally the source comes through a particular person or a group of people, or a person and that person's consort. Like you get something from them, and then it awakens within you, and then you go on and change your life and radically transform the way you see yourself in the world around you. So that's the guru. No matter who the guru is, we all have the same guru. We can say that's like Shiva, right? Bless you. There's only one guru, and that guru is the unbroken, unimpeded flow of transmission that flows in a sequence throughout the lineage, or within the tribe, or throughout the mandala. So the first term we get here is guru. And the word guru, by the way, is interchangeable with nara, like a human, a person. See, the person being like an embodied, living representation of the tradition as a whole. That's one. Acharya or guru or nara. The second term now is deva, which is God. Now, we could have just as easily used the word Shiva, but we didn't. We used the word deva. Remember, as Shaivas, the word deva is synonymous with the word Shiva. Tasmat prabhuharaha. Why is God Shiva? Because Shiva destroys. And according to the Shiva Jnana Bodha, an important foundational text on Shaivism, we know that Lord Shiva must be God because he's the destroyer, and only the one who destroys can create. For destruction is really reabsorption, and so we get this wonderful theology around why Shiva must be God. So when we say the word Deva, we just mean God, but we know that this refers to Shiva. So Shiva is the Guru, and now the second term introduces what Shiva is. It is that reality, eva tattvam, which one attains, upalabdham, as a result of that transmission. So God is what is got through diksha, meaning through the transmission, through the initiation of the initiating guru. One gets God, as it were, and there's only one God. So now we get a kind of monotheism, but really not just a monotheism, a monism. There's one reality, and that reality is called God. So this is a very non-dual idea, that God is not necessarily a being. God is being in and of itself. It's not necessarily impersonal, but it's not necessarily personal either. It's reality, capital R, and that reality is you. But you attain it. One attains it as a result of that transmission from the Guru. There's only one Guru, and that Guru is the ray of transmission that flows in a sequence, unimpeded and unbroken throughout the lineage. There's only one God, and that God is the reality to which one awakens as a result of receiving that transmission. And now we talk about Shakti. So the first term is Nara, or Acharya, or Guru. Second term is Shiva, which is here called Deva. And the third term is called Shakti. So again, this is the Traya, the Trinity, the Trika. The Devi Traya or the Shakti Traya or whatever. The Trika is God, me, and the world. Or me, God, and God's power. Nara, Shiva, and Shakti. Or better yet, Pashu, Pati, and Pasha. So these are all the trinities of our tradition. And so coming to Shakti now, this is where it gets really exciting, and this is why I wanted to put this here before we start the Vijnana Bhairava, to show you what it means to be a Shakta. Does it? I mean, it means many things. There's nothing it excludes, obviously. But this is a definition of Shakti. It's the Shakti of consciousness, Chit Shakti. So already you learned the word Tattvam, reality, is same as the word God. So God is reality. What is that reality? It's consciousness. The reality called consciousness is God, and the Guru is the one who awakens that recognition in you. But the Guru is not a person, it's the energy of that person which comes through the lineage. So that energy, that diksha, that initiation, awakens you to this reality called God. But that reality is consciousness, but most importantly, it's consciousness's power. So consciousness is endowed innately with a power called Shakti. And what is that? This is so beautiful. Shakti is, tasyaika, the Shakti is verily, the Shakti of that God, of that reality is sahaja, aham bhava bhumi. The bhumi, the ground of aham bhava, I amness. But not just any I amness. This is so beautiful. Sahaja. Aham bhava. It's the natural I amness. The natural, easeful, spontaneous I amness is called Shakti. So the ability of reality to repose in itself, in himself, and say literally because and ha, first letter, ha, last letter, that relaxation, that's called aham bhava, and it's natural, it's innate, it just pulses and throbs in all beings, from the ant all the way to the highest reality, to the highest deva, from Indra to the blade of grass. There's this constant throb of I am. I am. That I amness, that ability to articulate I amness is called Shakti. This is very nuanced. What we're talking about now is very subtle, it's very technical. Giving it articulation is very difficult, because we're talking about that which is too simple for words, actually. It's laughably simple. And it's so simple that the mind rejects it. So the only way we can understand this now is with the most refined, mind-bendingly refined, hair-splittingly refined, linguistic, mystical, ritualistic, and non-ritualistic philosophy and practice. But very simply, very directly, Shakti has been revealed here as your own I am sense. That's Shakti. How beautiful. So why do we say Kali, Devi? All this is kind of weird. We're just talking about ourselves, but not just ourselves, our sense of self. When you feel yourself to be, that feeling of, I am, that's called Shakti actually. That's a power. Chit Shakti. And of course, Chit Shakti will come with Ananda Shakti. So we know once you know I am, when you feel yourself to be, you'll be happy. Right? You'll be happy because we can't say, there's no because here. If there was a because, it's not free. You're happy just because. There's no because of something. But if we had to put a answer to like, because what? Like what? It's because of fullness. And we'll talk about why in just a bit. You're right now actually full as you are, and we'll point that out. Hopefully in just a few moments, we'll point out that fullness. And that Purnamada is actually Purnamidam. That God, which is considered to be full, is here now, me, and I am full. Already, innately. Even when I feel empty, it's an expression of my fullness. So that fullness is why it's Ananda Shakti. Chit Shakti equals Ananda Shakti. And once you have Chit Shakti and Ananda Shakti, exactly, Purnamada, Purnamidam. And if you have Chit Shakti and Ananda Shakti, which is again the same Shakti, you'll have Icha, Kriya, Jnana. So Icha means will, Jnana means knowledge, Kriya means action. This is Shakti Traya, Icha, Kriya, Icha, Jnana, Kriya. We don't need to get into it now. But these 5 things make up Shakti. So the trident, Icha meaning will or itch, a primordial urge. To do what? To know and to do. So what is God? God is that consciousness, which is the single reality, reposing in its own innate bliss, endowed with the powers of willing, knowing, and doing. This is the definition of the ultimate reality. Again, what is Shiva? Shiva is that reality called consciousness, which you are, reposing in its own innate fullness, endowed with the powers of willing, knowing, and doing. I'll put this another way. Shakti, the definition of Shakti, is that reality called consciousness, which you are, reposing in its own innate blissful fullness, endowed with the powers of willing, knowing, and doing. Let me put it another way. That Shiva is Shakti, and that Shakti is essentially you, who are none other than consciousness, recognizing your own bliss, and therefore desiring to know and to do. Oh my God, wasn't that beautiful? Like, what is God? I'm patting myself on the back here. No, it's not me. These are all terms we get from the tradition. I'm just like translating them. But here's the very important, very important. What are you? You are Shiva. What is Shiva? You are Shakti. So Shiva is Shakti is you. The 3 are one. The trident is one thing, even though the spokes look different. So Shiva is Shakti. That's why, again, it would be very, very glib, not altogether untrue, but somewhat peripheral and superficial to say there's the Shiva and there's Shakti. There is not Shiva and Shakti. There is just Shiva Shakti. And actually, now at this level of the tradition, the level of the like text that you're studying, it makes no sense to say Shiva and Shakti. Actually, it does. Of course, it does. You can still use those terms, but it's better to say me. Aham. Aham means I am, and that's what we mean by Shiva and Shakti. Actually, it's about me right now, right here. That's thrilling. It's thrilling to know that what we're talking about is the simplest, most direct reality available to us. We're not conjecturing. This is not religion. This is spirituality. And the simplicity of it is frustrating sometimes. Because Jai Ma Virupakshi Devi Jai Ma. Because if you learn this, it's going to be very frustrating because then you can't like hold on really to... You can't really justify rules. That's the problem, you know. And you can't justify impurity. Like you can't justify why to eat this and not to eat that. That's the problem. And nobody likes it when you say you can eat what you want. Nobody likes it when you say you can do what you want. Nobody likes it when you say you can be happy. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the problem. Like it's very hard to accept those teachings in a world where we're conditioned to feel like we're insufficient or broken or like we don't deserve to be happy or we need to do something to earn love or to earn happiness. That's why it's very hard to teach this teaching because it leads to outcomes, conclusions, worldviews that are necessarily kind of disturbing. So think of outer planets, Neptune or Uranus or whatever. It's like its influence is kind of edgy. And that's the thing. It's so simple, so direct that it's so edgy. It's the cutting edge of knowledge. Say Vedanta. It's the cutting edge. But it's not Vedanta in any one sense, Kevala Advaita or Vedanta in the sense of Ramanuja or something. It's literally the cutting edge of wisdom because it reveals everything to be one thing, and that one thing is what? Myself. Everything is me. And what am I? I am consciousness, endowed with my own innate beauty and fullness, and having recognized that, I therefore desire. This is where it gets interesting. I desire. What do I desire? I desire to know and to do. And knowing and doing are the same thing. To know is a kind of doing, and by doing I learn. My doing is a sort of knowing, and my knowing is a sort of doing. Now this is where words become very poetic and very subtle and likely to go over our heads because we're talking about that which cannot be talked about because it's the one talking. That's the problem. You can't talk about the subject because to do so would be to objectify it, and you can't objectify the subject except in this lens, to say the subject and object are one, and that one is me, is you, it is. And so yes, and that's what we already do, and that's the logic of it. It's like none of this should sound new to you. It should be like, oh yeah, what do I want? I want to know, I want to do. I'm curious, so I go to a class and I want to learn something. And then having learned it, maybe I want to do something about it. I do a puja or something. And when I do a puja, I learn more. Or when I do something, I want to learn. And when I learn, I want to do. There's like a link between knowing and doing. In fact, aren't I doing something right now by simply knowing myself? I know that I am, and that's an action. The very fact that I am self-aware is already itself kind of dynamism. I am aware now. I like to think I am. There's a Alanis Morissette song. What is it? Oh, you've already won me over despite of me. Don't be alarmed if I fall head over feet. Oh my god, it's one of my favorite songs on the Jagged Little Pill record. Head Over Feet, it's called. And what a beautiful song. Alanis is like, you treat me like a princess, and I'm not used to liking that. Yeah, I'm sorry. So, you know what happened? I was at this place yesterday with Elizabeth Ma. Actually, she had a photo shoot at a Club Wednesdays, which turns into Bar Sinister on Saturday, so that goth club, and on Wednesdays, it's Club Wednesday. So I went to go see Elizabeth for her shoot. And then we end up at the place next door called Bordner's. And this guy comes up to me, and then he hands me his phone, and he's like, I have all of these credits. I don't know what that means, but apparently it's like the jukebox. Like, you can like put in songs for the bar. And it was funny, he gives me his phone, and he's a sweet, really wonderful guy. So Yvonne, if you're listening to this, that was a beautiful conversation. Actually, I should tell you something. In our conversation, we were discussing things like this, and he said something really beautiful. He was like, oh, it's a bit like The Egg, like the YouTube video, you know, from, I don't know, I forget what the channel is, but I would cite it if I remembered. But you know, The Egg, like that. Yeah, the anda. Ananda anda, maybe. Anda means egg in Sanskrit. So he says, oh, it's a bit like the egg. And then he said something beautiful. He said, one day I will be where you are, and you will be where I am. And I look forward to that day. It was really beautiful. He was like, oh, I'm hearing this from you, and I'm learning this now. But then one day I will be there teaching it. Like something interesting. He said, like, because I was saying the one looking through my eyes at you is the one looking through your eyes at me. We're having this wonderful discussion. And then he hands me his phone, and he says, I trust you. Hold this. And then he goes to the bathroom. And then he explains to me that I can put songs in. So I put in Duran Duran's Hungry Like the Wolf and Alanis Morissette's Head Over Feet, which was such a different vibe than what was playing there. I don't know. I don't want to waste all his credits either. I saw he had 70 credits, and like if you want to put the song in the priority, it's like 5 credits or something. If you just put it on the queue, it's 2 credits. So I put the Alanis song in the regular queue, and I was like, fuck, let me just try the priority thing. So I'm sorry, Yvonne, I used 5 of your credits. So from 17, you're at 12 now, but thank you for the jukebox opportunity. But yeah, we're back to Bordner's. That's why I was thinking, like, what are these song lyrics from? Oh yeah, it's from 2 in the morning at Bordner's. That's where it's coming from, deep in the subconscious. But I am aware now. Like this ability to be I am is an awareness. There's no time in which we're not aware. Even when we're deep sleeping, you know, when we're in deep sleep and there's no dream whatsoever, even then we are aware. Because even then I can say I had no dreams. I was sleeping deeply. So awareness is innate with I amness. I can't be without being aware, and I can't be aware without being. It's Sat Chit. And we'll come to the Ananda in a bit, because the whole text is about Ananda. This is why people, in one sense, have a very big problem with Shaivism, because Shaivism is about Ananda. It's about bliss. So the whole point is to recognize that you're Shiva, and once you are Shiva, what will you do? This is important. What will you do when you realize you're Shiva? You literally anything and everything. To realize you're Shiva is to realize, actually right now I am the cat peeking under the car, trying to see what's under the car. I am the curiosity of the cat. The cat has a will to know and to do. And when it looks under the hood of the car or something, when it looks under the car, it sees, hey look, there's some mouse or something. It knows there's a mouse and it pounces on the mouse. It does based on its knowledge, based on its curiosity, and the curiosity will eventually kill the cat. But it's okay. That's also an expression of the fullness. So the fullness then is literally everything, everywhere, all at once, and every action, which is both knowing and doing, which is the desire of consciousness. Consciousness plays this game. That's why it's challenging philosophy, because in one sense it comes across as nihilism, in the other sense it comes across as like hedonism. But it's the opposite end of the spiritual spectrum, where you start with this like indulgent, like plunging into life to look for fulfillment outside of yourself. In one sense, this is the diametric opposite, in which having found fullness within yourself, needing nothing, you now express yourself as everything. So that being said, what do? You know and you do, and like your will is that. Your urge, your will is to know and to do, and that's what God wants. Like God wants to know and to do, and God wants from fullness, not from lack. That's why it's not a God that's empty here, that who wants something he doesn't already have, but it's a God that's full, who because of his fullness is expressing himself maximally in every conversation that happens in every goth bar in LA and elsewhere. Like everything is full. The whole thing is happening within consciousness for its own sake. Now, therefore, we can define God in the following way. God is that reality, sometimes called Shiva, most likely essentially called Shakti, who is none other than consciousness, which is your very own self. Right now, right here, always has been, always will be, timelessly is the case. You are that consciousness, that reality called God, sometimes called Shiva and Shakti, which is always ever reposing in its own self-sense, aham bhava, naturally, spontaneously. And because of the joy of that, the Gyanauga, or the Saundarya Lahari, the beautiful arising wave, or the flood of wisdom, or the flood of bliss, Anandauga, what a beautiful word, Siddhauga, Gyanauga, Anandauga, like the bliss, because of the fullness, the prasara sara, the sara prasara, the flow of your own essence, because of that bliss of recognizing yourself, which is fullness, there comes this desire, the desire to know and to do. That's God. So God is that desirous reality who knows and does in all knowers and all actors. So this is the kind of philosophy that we get in this very simple word right here. Shakti. So Shiva, Guru equals Shiva equals Shakti. And the three are one. This is why it's like so confusing, and the trident becomes the necessary symbol for all of this. Okay, so coming to the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra now. By the way, when we talk about the tantric revelation, often at the end of the text they'll say, this has come about through the union of Shiva and Shakti, Rudra Yamala. It's not necessarily the case that Rudra Yamala is a tantra, though of course it's maintained to be a tantra. But by tantra is meant that which comes about when Shiva and Shakti are coming together. And by coming together, it means literally coming together. They're fucking. But here fucking also means talking. So they're coming together, coming to the conclusion together. The wordplay is very hard to capture in English. And maybe I'm realizing now for public audiences somewhat undesirable to express in English. Because, of course, we're talking about God. How can we talk about sex? I'm sorry, it's Shaivism. What the fuck do you expect us to do? It's Tantra. Like, the whole thing is couched in this sort of metaphor, which can, of course, in some cases be taken literally. But usually, no. Usually it's taken as a metaphor that Shiva and Shakti are coming together because they come together. And this is both speech and it's both sex, because the act of lovemaking is a dialogue, and the act of speaking is also a dialogue. The yogini vaktra, the mouth of the yogini, means both yoni and it means the mouth. And so the prasara, the visarga, can be both an ejaculation. Even the word ejaculation is interesting. It means both ejaculating and also like that's also an ejaculation. We shout, you're like, you know. So it's a loving dialogue. Yes, it's Yamala, so Rudra Yamala. So here is the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, that realization that has come through the union of Shiva and Shakti, which is here called the fierce Bhairava. So this doesn't have to be Bhairava's wisdom teaching. It could be the teaching of Shiva and Shakti called Wisdom Bhairava, the Wisdom Bhairava Tantra. That's the name of the Tantra. Now, we get this. Shri Devi Uvacha, Devi Uvacha. So the goddess said. So the whole thing opens with Shri, the goddess Shri. And she says, Shruttam Deva Maya Sarvam Rudra Yamala Sambhavam Trika Bhedam Asheshena Sarat Sara Vibhagashaha Sarat Sara Vibhagashaha. So I have heard, O Lord, the complete teaching. So the Sarvam, the whole thing. And here it's called the Trika Bheda. So Asheshena means without Shesha, without remainder. So I'm going to translate the word Asheshena, without remainder, Ashesha, to like completely. So I've heard the complete teaching. So I've heard everything. Without remainder, without exclusion. I've heard the whole teaching of the Trika. The three things arising from our union in the various esoteric doctrines. So this Sarat Sara Vibhagasaha, she's saying some of these things are essence, some of these things are not essential, and they're divided into these two categories of essential and non-essential. They're also divided further into three categories, maybe dual, non-dual, and qualified non-dual. And basically she's saying, I just heard it all. Everything that you've ever said to me and everything that I've ever said to you, everything that we've ever said together arising in our dialogue, in our lovemaking, I've heard all of it already by now. Shrutam Deva Maya Sarvam Rudra Yamala Sambhavam Trika Bhedam Ashashena Sara Sara Vibhagasaha. So look, this idea is already expressing to us what kind of person we have to be before we're ready to do this kind of text. We should have already heard it all. This is a culminating teaching almost, a final teaching. It's after having mastered all the tantras that this teaching is given. So it's very funny because my Guru Deva was also recently telling this to me. We were talking about some recent events and he had said to me, like, he's like, you have to be more secret. He was like, you can't just like say all this stuff like to everyone, like in public. And even he asked me, like, how did your grandfather practice this? And I had to say, yes, Maharaj, in the jungle. Because it's true. My grandfather did so much in the jungle, like outside the public eye, you know, and so much so that even my grandmother, I would talk to her extensively about some of his practices, and she didn't know a lot of what he would be doing in the jungle, just like how when Sri Ramakrishna would practice in Bhairavi Brahmani, you know. So again, it's like saying like this is something that maybe is offered after a lifetime, if not several lifetimes of immersion in the tradition, because that's where she is, where Parvati is when she comes to him for the teaching. You know, she's already ready for this teaching because she's already heard everything. She's like, I've heard everything. Shrutram Deva Mayam Sarvam Maya Sarvam. Oh, but Lord, I've heard everything. There's nothing left to hear at this point. That's what she says. The text opens with that. And then she says, but even now, Adyapi na nivrito me. Oh, sorry, I should put it back on the screen. So you to see. And she says to him, Adyapi na nivrito me shamshayaha parameshvara kim rupam tatvato deva. This is a question. Kim rupam tatvato deva shabda rashi kalamayam. You know, there's no question mark in Sanskrit, but Kim Rupa means what is the form? So she's saying, but even now, Api, and yet she's saying, I have doubts, O Supreme Lord. What is the ultimate nature of reality, O God? Kim Rupam Tattvato Deva. And now she asks the question, is it the pervasive mass of sounds known as the Shabdarashi? Shabdarashi Kalamayam? And here we can get into a very deep discussion about mantra, the 50 phonemes. And we've done so in other places, so I won't go into it too much now. But the very simple idea here is that the universe is expressed as sound. In the Mandukya Upanishad, we get this idea. Sarvam Omkara Eva, all of this is verily Om. Om being the resonance, the nada, and within this nada appears bindu. So this nada, bindu, kind of shabda, brahmavada idea is being expressed here. So the thing to understand though is the first letter of the Sanskrit alphabet by Matrika symbol, Matrika order is A. A here is primordial consciousness. It's creation. Shrishti. But the last letter is Ha. Or even the Visarga is like a Aha. So even within the vowels, it's Ah through to the Visarga, to Aha. But even in the consonants, the last one is Ha. Ksha being a compound is not necessarily counted, but we count it in order to make 49 into 50, just for the sake of completeness, right? But in fact, there are 49 matrikas. And so the 49th is actually Ha. So through Ha. All of this together becomes aham, I am. And that's the ultimate mantra, as we're going to learn. But all the mantras are contained within this. So she's asking about mantra. She's saying, is God that Maha Mantra which contains all mantras? Is that what God is? And then she asks, or is it the ninefold Bhairava among the forms of Bhairava? Or is it the three-headed Bhairava? Or perhaps it is the triad of powers, Icha, Jnana, Kriya. So this Navatma Bhedana Bhairava, I just wanted to point to Tantra Loka in this fourth book. In this 207th verse, we get these 9 levels of Bhairava. Shiva, which is pure eye consciousness, the transcendent formless reality. Shakti, the dynamic power of awareness to say, I am this. And then there's Sadashiva, the state where I predominates, but includes a glimmer of this, pure affirmation of the self. Ishvara, the state where this predominates, but suffused with the light of I. Shuddha Vidya, or just Vidya, the perfect balance of I and this, the harmony of subject and object. All of these are incredibly dense because they're so subtle. So don't even worry about it. But it's just like basically the sentence, Aham Idam, I am this. It's different emphasis on the sentence. But you should know that these are just the first 5 tattvas in the 36 tattva system. Then there's Maya, the principle of difference or veiling or limitation, which is the beginning of this world's creation. There's Kala, the limitation of agency. Icha Shakti contracted is called Kala. There's Kala, which is the limitation of temporal freedom, the imposition of past, present, and future. And Niyati, which is the limitation of order, law, direction, determinacy, or like karma, cause and effect, and like whatnot. So putting all this together, these are the 9 levels of Bhairava. So it's like an early 36 tattva model, you know. And you can see it corresponds to maybe the 9 avaranas of the Sri Chakra. Very, very technical stuff. Very like deep tantric ritual stuff. But I just wanted to show you that there's like, oh my god, it disappeared. Oh wait, no, I can do this. Oh fuck. Damn, I guess that's that. Whoops. Swaha, I guess. Okay, anyway, so at least we got to talk about it. It's gone now. So that's what it was. I don't know how to get it back. I just clicked this and then it went away. Oh well. Now you know the Navatma Bhairava are those 9 levels of reality. Okay, those Shiva, Shakti. Oh, control. That's what I just did. I undid. Did I undo? Oh, wait, do I control? Okay. I don't know. It's okay. Never mind. So, Kim Rupam. What is the reality? Is it that? Is it the 9 levels of Bhairava? Or is it the Trishura Bhairava, the 3-headed Bhairava? Or is it the Shakti Traya, Icha, Jnana, Kriya? Like, these are all tantric terms. We know about them from our studies elsewhere. But again, in this text, it's not that important to understand them because, presumably, this text is not going to teach them, as we'll soon see. Nada bindu mayam vapi kim chandrada nirodikaha chakrarudham manachkam va kim va shakti swarupakam. Or is it nada and bindu? Or perhaps the Ardha Chandra or the Nirodhika. Is it the circle of consciousness, the vowelless mantra? Or is it of the form Shakti? These might even refer to other schools like Shabda Brahmavada and things like that. And we know that the word Ardha Chandra, Nirodhika, they're all like within that very yogic, very esoteric interpretation of the 9 levels of the sound. So like you can look over here. There's this. This is from the Shabda Brahmavada tradition, which Somananda references a lot. So Om, M, is the beginning of all the audible sounds. So Ma is when all the sounds start. And then you just work your way back. So then there's U and A. So A, U, Ma, you learn that from the Mandukya Upanishad. Now we add all these other things like Bindu. So Bindu is the concentration of the audible sound before sound, or the point of silence after sound. So after Om, there can be a Bindu. Before Om, there's also a Bindu. Arguably, Om comes from the Bindu. And Bindu here can mean it like semen, so it's like the seed from which the universe springs forth. That Bindu, that drop, is like a concentration of all audible sound. So think of the Big Bang, but don't think of it physically as like an explosion of space. Think of the Big Bang, but think of it as an explosion of sound, of vibration. And that bang comes from this Bindu, which is about to explode. But what is it? It's an Ardha Chandra, the movement from Nirodha to Bindu, which is the universal to the particular, the first impulse towards sound, if you will. Stepping one step back, Nirodha is sound in the universal. Nada is the first condensation of Paravak. Nadanta is the beginning of that condensation. Shakti Sparsha Vyapti, the will to express. Vyapini is the all-pervasive vibration prior to will. Samana, an indeterminate movement towards expression. And Unmana, transcendental pure word. So this is all really complex, really beautiful, technically precise linguistic mysticism, or Shabda Brahmavada we call it, the doctrine of the universe as sound. So we can go either way. We can start from Ma and go back to Unmana, which is the Samhara Krama. But let's now go from Unmana to Ma. I don't really mean to explain all of these things because they're quite hard to understand. But the essential idea is simple. It's emanation, is it not? It's like something general becomes something particular. Something vyashti becomes samashti. The general to the particular. What's the general? Transcendental pure word, vach, called unmana. Mana means mind, so unmana means beyond the mind. Then samana means sort of a condensation of that, which is an indeterminate yet, still indeterminate, but it's a movement towards something precise. Vyapini means an all-pervasive vibration prior to the Shakti or Sparsha Vyapti, the will to express, which then becomes Nadanta, the end of Nada, which finally becomes Nada. So Nada being the resonance of Paravak, which then is Nirodha, which Nirodha means to block its all-pervasive nature. So Nirodha is almost synonymous with Maya. So Maya then moves through Ardha Chandra to the Bindu. So Bindu is a condensation of the general. So all of this you can say, you just think of all of this as a kind of Nada, the general. Nada is the general. And Bindu is the particular. And from this Bindu emerges all sound. Like Om being the primordial sound. This is very beautiful. And so Devi is asking, is that it? Is it like that? And then she says, Para parayaha sakalam aparayascha vapunaha paraya yadi tadvat syat paratvam tad virudhyate. And again, while all the aforementioned might pertain of the transcendent immanent para, or even of the immanent apara, if we were to think of the transcendent supreme goddess para, or just the transcendent reality in these ways, would that not contradict her transcendence? This is so important. This is the key teaching here, because the Devi is pointing something out. If you say she is any of these things, you've already limited her. If you say the transcendent goddess is the nine-headed Bhairava or the three-headed Bhairava, if you say it's any of these things, Nada, Bindu, or Ardha, Chandra, or Nirodhika, if you say anything about it, haven't you already limited it to that thing which you said it is? That's a beautiful idea. If you say it's Kali, if you say it's Shiva, if you say it's Krishna, if you say it's Jesus, you're fucked. Because the moment you say God is any one of these things, you've already limited God. It's a very deeply Ramakrishnan idea. Who can say what God is not? Right? If you say what is God, you can say God is none of these things, but then you would limit God. And if you say God is some of these things and not other things, worse, if you say God is just Jesus, you're fucked. Absolutely fucked, because your theology becomes very contradictory now. You're on one hand saying that God is the absolute, and by the absolute you mean the all-pervasive, unlimited reality. But then you're saying, oh, but my God is the way, the truth, and the life, and your God is wrong, so I'll go and kill you. Like, how can you do that? How can you on one hand say God is everything, and not just everything, transcendent, and then on the very other hand, you say, no, it can only be this. Who has the authority to limit God? And notice, it's not even a matter of authority, it's a matter of like, philosophy. It's just that you cannot. Yeah, Nama Rupa will limit. So saying any one version of God is a big problem. That's why a Shaiva who says no to Shakti or a Shakta who says no to Shiva is just an idiot. They just don't understand what they're talking about. Devi is here pointing out to Shiva, as it were, in this mythological Puranic sense, that by Shiva you cannot mean a particular fella. By Shakti you cannot mean a particular woman either, like some crazy, like fierce lady, like cutting up bodies or something. She's not that, but she can't be just that, because then she wouldn't be transcendent anymore. And if you want to use the word para, the transcendent, and ultimately that's what we mean by God, then how can any of these things be valuable? How can any of the things you've taught me really, really capture that which is transcendent? Aren't they all just words? They can't even point to it, because even if they successfully point to it, it would be an it. How can it be an it? See, isn't that beautiful? Don't say, oh, finger pointing to the moon. No, the moon itself can't be it, because the moon is an object. It's a very deep teaching, It's not, you can't point to it, you can't indicate it. So then what is the use of teaching? That's what she's saying. She's recognizing the futility of everything, having mastered everything. Then she gives a teaching actually in this question, sort of. In verse 6, she says, Nahi varna vibhedena deha bhedena va bhavet paratvam nishkalatvena sakalatve na tad bhavet. Verily, the transcendent supreme goddess cannot be qualified by various letters. Varna vibheda. Nahi varna vibheda. Verily, indeed not through letters. Indeed not through forms. Deha bhedena. Va bhavet. Va means or. So neither through letters, mantras, nor through forms. To point to Bhairavi Nikhila Devi's point here, neither through varna meaning names, nor through rupa. So varna deha is same as nama rupa. So she can't have any nama rupa. Paratvam, that reality, is nishkala, without parts. So if we think of it, if you think of it as having parts, sakalatva, that cannot be. Natad bhavet. It cannot be with parts, when at the same time it's without parts. That effort, that supreme reality. So bless me with this grace, O Lord. Prasadam kurume nata nishesham chindhi shamshayam. Chindhi, cut or destroy, remove my doubts, O Lord. Bless me with your grace. Prasadam kurumenata nishesham chindi shamshayam. And totally nishesham, without any remainder. Absolutely destroy, annihilate my doubts without any remainder. Now, see, let's be a bit Puranic if you don't mind. If you think of Shiva, what do you think of? Of course, lots of things. What can't you think of? But generally you get the idea of peace, quiescence. But it's kind of disruptive, and not just disruptive, it's destructive. If he closes his eyes and goes into samadhi, he has destroyed the universe, at least his experience of the universe, because he withdraws from the world. He closes his eyes, goes into his heart, and forgets about the whole world, becoming absorbed with some inner reality. So even when Shiva is meditating peacefully and quietly, he's still sitting in the smashan doing so. Or he's sitting on Mount Kailash in the ice. The idea of Mount Kailash is that it's like you can't live there. It's not a home for regular people. Oh my god, a jackal. It's not a home for regular people. It's just a wasteland. Wasteland, baby. I actually love that Hosea record. I love all the Hosea records, but that one especially. So it's a wasteland. Why would Shiva live there? Why would he live in the smashan? The point is, these things represent destruction. So even when Shiva is meditating, he's destroying the universe. But what to say then of his dance, the Prachanda Tandava? So when we think of Shiva, remember, you think of him as dancing the Tandava, Prachanda Tandava, just fierce dancing. And in his dance, he destroys the entire universe. And there's a beautiful, I mean, like, let me see if I might have it here. I have an English translation of Swami Vivekananda's song to Shiva. And he has many songs to Shiva, right? Nikhila bhuvana janma sthema bhanga praroha akalita mahimana kalpitaya tratasmin zuvimala gaga. Like, he's got these songs, but this is not that. This is a different one. That's a famous one from Swamiji. But this is a different one. Let me just find it for you. It's like a hymn to Shiva. Okay, a hymn to Shiva. No, this is Nikhila Bhuvana Janma. It's got Ambe Stotram is really beautiful. Hymn to the Divine Mother. But the reason why I want to show you this poem is because it's Lord Shiva's, like, it's Swami Vivekananda's vision of Lord Shiva. And it's scary. That's why I want to show it to you. Okay, it's called the Dance of Shiva. Nache Bhole or something like that. The theater or the Dance of Shiva. So here's what he says about it. And he's having a vision of Shiva at this point. So he's saying, "Lo, the great God is dancing." I love the word lo. Ho, the great God is dancing. Shiva, the all-destroyer, the Lord of creation, the master of yoga and the wielder of Pinaka, the trident bearer. His flaming locks have filled the sky. Wow. 7 worlds play the rhythm as the trembling earth sways to dissolution. Lo, the great God is dancing. And that's it. Which is a simple Bengali song, I think. In Bengali, right? Not in Sanskrit, in Bengali. Anyway, this is the English translation. So he's dancing, and his terrible locks, his flaming locks have filled the sky. And the trembling earth sways to dissolution as he dances. And there's another one where... never mind. It's another one. He's shooting fire out of his trident. So, like, these are visions that Swamiji is having of Lord Shiva, and they're quite destructive. In fact, in one song to Swamiji Murta Maheshwara, it said that Swami Vivekananda is the Shiva dancing the Tandava. Because when he came to America, he came not to fulfill but to destroy. In the sense that he came to destroy what you think is true about religion. You thought you were sinners. He came and said, it is a sin to call you so. It is a standing libel on human dignity. The Hindu refuses to call you a sinner. He calls you a child of immortal bliss. And you're like, whoa, that's destructive. And people really didn't like it. What he had to say was really hard for many people to hear, especially Christian missionaries and a lot of people back home in India. They just couldn't stand him. That's one thing about Swamiji. As much as he was beloved, as much as he had a very loyal band of people around him, his general, more or less, kind of reception was with a lot of reservation, fear, and indignation, because he was saying things that were kind of destructive to the popular way of thinking about religion. So they were saying he's like dynamic and energized and kind of destructive. Wherever he goes, what he builds is destroying what came before. So he's dancing the Prachanda Tandava. His disciple says this of him, that he is Shiva actually dancing the Tandava here and there all over the world. But when you think of Shiva dancing the Tandava, he destroys the world. He has a trident, and he is depicted as a very destructive deity. In fact, he is the Lord of Destruction. And he destroys by reabsorbing. So he destroys either through a very fierce dance, or by closing his eyes and by fiercely withdrawing. So in this way, he's Bhairava. So now we can use the word Bhairava to refer to Shiva. Bhairava in the Puranas could be Lord Shiva's guard. It's like a incarnation of Lord Shiva, like an avatara, or like a Ishvara Koti, like a part of Shiva. Or Parivara, like a part of Shiva's family. And so Bhairava, as a Puranic deity, might be separate from Shiva, but an emanation of Shiva to protect Shiva. He's Shiva's guard. But here we're using the word Bhairava to refer to Lord Shiva himself in this fierce and destructive form. Fanged and scary. So he's Chanda, Prachanda. He's very fierce. So Bhairava and Shiva are interchangeable. But specifically Bhairava, the reason why these words are different is because Bhairava is referring to a function of Shiva. Yeah, and it's like, is this Lord Shiva's like alter ego? No, we say it's his true ego. Because remember, again, if I say Shiva is meditating, is he not destroying the world? No, he is. His meditation itself is how he destroys the world. So one way to think of destruction is through Lord Shiva meditating. Another way to think of destruction is to think of Lord Shiva dancing. Let's root this in the lineage. Isn't this just like Swami Vivekananda and Swami Brahmananda? They're literally doing the same thing, except one just sits on his ass all day and closes his eyes. The other one runs this way, runs that way, giving lectures everywhere. But both of them are destroying the world. Both of them are Ramakrishna's avatars. Think of this. It's a very beautiful idea. You cannot think of Swamiji without Swami Brahmananda, and you cannot think of Swami Brahmananda without thinking of Swami Vivekananda. Similarly, you cannot think of heat without fire, and fire without heat, or milk without whiteness, whiteness without milk, water without wetness, and wetness without water. Essentially, I'm saying you cannot think of Shiva without Shakti. But I'm just going to abandon the word Shakti now and stay with Shiva and put it this way. You can't think of Shiva without Bhairava, and Bhairava without Shiva. In other words, you can't think of Shiva meditating without admitting that he destroys the world in that way, just as readily as he also destroys the world with his dance. How beautiful is this? That however you like to skin the cat, which I never understood that metaphor. So who is skinning it? But however you like to skin it, you get the hide anyway. So is it Jekyll and Hyde? I don't know. I don't think you can put it that way either, because Jekyll, he doesn't like that he's Hyde, right? He's like, oh fuck, what did I do? As Hyde, he just goes crazy and shit. And then Dr. Jekyll is like, this is like a split personality disorder. Shiva does not have a split personality disorder. He's in fact very consistent. He just fucks shit up. He just destroys everything. He's the god of destruction, you know? And so that's why I think like the flavor of Shaivism is interesting too, because it's kind of destructive, you know. And there are moments where Jesus, he like looks at buildings and shit, and he says like really like scary terrorist sounding things, you know. Like he looks at a building, he's like, not one brick will be left standing here, you know. In Mark, he's commenting about the church, he's like, not one brick will be left standing, and I'm like, somebody's about to call a terrorist like warning on this guy, like, you know, like it's like don't come to school tomorrow kind of thing. Like, Jesus is really fucking like problematic in that way. So that's why we like, in the Shaiva sense, we like him a lot. And he'll, you know, Jesus, you know what he'll do? He'll come to your house, you'll fall in love with him, and then he'll say, okay, fuck all this, let's go. That's what he'll do. Like, if you're like really willing to like listen to what he has to say, you're fucked. You're absolutely fucked, because if you hear him, if you let the vampire in, you'll be converted. He'll bite your neck, you'll turn into a vampire. The bite of a holy man is like a cobra. The poison will continue to work long after it's been applied. Truth is a corrosive substance. Once you hear it once, the poison will continue to work until you're decently dead. So don't let the vampire in. You know, if he's knocking the door, and if Christ himself is at your door knocking the door, and if you open the door, if you listen to him, if you listen to what he has to say, and you are ready to hear it, let he who hath ears hear, what would happen is probably you would follow him out into the desert, where the foxes have their homes and the birds have their nests, but you might not have anywhere to lay your head. And he will say, let the dead bury their dead. He who looks back is not fit to follow me. That's why we killed him. It's arguably the case that Buddha, Socrates, Christ, like Shiva, these are all beings whose teachings, like Swamiji also, whose teachings are a bit hard to accept. And from a Shaiva point of view, that's the flavor of Shaivism. He's kind of like a bad boy, but not because he means to be, just because that's his role in the Trika. Vishnu sustains, Brahma creates, and Shiva reabsorbs, which arguably is what you are all trying to do when you come to spiritual life. In spiritual life, you're going through the Sanghara Krama. So because it's Sanghara Krama, Shiva becomes very appealing. Shiva, especially Kali and Bhairava become very appealing for spiritual practitioners, because they represent the pure energies of destruction, which now become actually kind of appealing, kind of valuable. I was speaking to a dear friend the other day about student loans, and I said to her, I was like, Ma, nache ma, time for you to start dancing. I said, oh ma, Samsara Chakradharini, you who are the wielder of the strange circle of samsara. Nache, you who are the Tandava Karini, the one who performs the Prachanda Tandava. Dance, man, dance. I said, destroy. Like, I'm waiting for you to dance and destroy it, and then you won't have to worry about your student loans. I told her, I'm like, is the apocalypse here? Because it's up to you. It's up to you to see. Like, anyway, all of this sounds like don't come to school tomorrow kind of talk, which I'm just, you know, I'm an entertainer. Don't take any of these things seriously. No, any references to characters, real or imagined, are purely coincidental. This is purely for entertainment purposes only. This is the energy of Shiva, like the energy of just like, let the dead bury their dead kind of thing. It's renunciance energy, it's a monastic energy, it's an energy of asceticism sometimes. Not necessarily though, it's an energy of transcendence. So destruction is naturally going to be what it's called, you know, samhara. So Lord Shiva, when he dances or whether he's not dancing, it's the same thing. But it's important to remember that what you pray to him for then is this. You know, when Sri Ramakrishna, if you pray to Sri Ramakrishna, oh, Ramakrishna, like, give me money or something, he'll be like, how can I do that? Remember, Swamiji went to Sri Ramakrishna, and Swamiji was like, help me, like, intercede on my behalf and get my family money. And Sri Ramakrishna says, I can't make such prayers. That's an important thing to remember. Like Shri Ramakrishna is the avatara. In one sense, there's nothing he can't do, but he also represents pure liberating power. You know, and if that's the case, then what do we pray for? This is very important and direct advice here, which is, how do we pray to Lord Shiva? Chindi shamshayam. Chindi, destroy, cut. Chindi, cut it. Cut what? My doubts. Without remainder. Totally remove my doubts, or totally destroy my doubts. Prasadam kurume nata. So what is the prasad? The grace of Lord Shiva or Kali. Destruction. But what do they destroy? Not anything physical. Why would we take the trouble to destroy anything? People think, oh, Shaivas, are they destructive? Absolutely not. Why would we take the trouble? Our Kali will do it for us anyway. Shiva will do it for us. Time will destroy everything. Do you think Christ himself tore down the buildings that he saw? He just said, no, not even one stone will be left upon this building. His was a teaching of impermanence. Once you recognize impermanence, you know that everyone's already dead. Why kill them? Do you know what I mean? Why go and kill anything? You won't kill anything. You've already recognized that they're all already dead. To kill something is superfluous, you know? I don't have to kill you or anyone, or even myself, because you're all dead. I'm dead. Shiva's killed us already. It's just a matter of time. But in the simultaneity of time, it's already done. So that's, Bhairavindikla saying the mind constructs, the vikalpas. And this is a prayer to Lord Shiva that we can learn. Prasadam kurume nata nishesham chindi shamshayam. Oh Lord Shiva, I've heard it all and it doesn't make any sense to me. So now destroy all my doubts. I pray for this grace, O Lord. Totally remove my doubts. So what does Bhairava say to this? Sadhu, sadhu, toya prishtam, tantra saramidam priye. Oh, beloved, priye, my dear. Sadhu, sadhu, well done. Toya prishtam, tantra saram. This that you have asked, this prishta, this question, toya prishtam, tantra saramidam. This is the very essence of tantra, oh my beloved. You know, you've asked this question. I'm really happy because it means that you've come so far. And what are you now? A sadhu. So, meaning you're ripe, you're perfect. Sadhu means done, or well done, or... literally, sadhu means well done. I just realized now. Well done as in like cooked. You've been cooked well. You're like ripe. Paka ami, well done. So, renunciation, just as the fragrance of a flower... No, how do I put this? When a flower fully blooms, it has fragrance. Yes, the fragrance of a human fully bloomed is called renunciation, vairagya. That's the idea. So he's sadhu. You become a sadhu. He's happy. He's saying sadhu, sadhu tvaya prishtam, tantra saramidam pre. Now comes the teaching. Badre can mean, oh auspicious one, or hey baby. Right? Like Badre means my wife. He says, Badre, oh baby. Guhaniyatamam. This is super secret. Guhaniyatamam. This is super secret. Tathapi katayamite. However, I will tell you. Tatapi. Even so. Tatapi. Api. Tatapi. Even so, katayamite. I will tell you. Kata. Amite. Katayamite. I will tell you. But remember, baby, this is a secret. Right, Lord Shiva? And I'm now more and more appreciating why. Because what this will lead to is recognition that there's no impurity in the world. That everything is equally holy, which is hard teaching for many. So, katayamite. Yat kinchit sakalam rupam bhairavasya prakirtitam. I will tell you the secret, and I will tell you more about these forms of the Bhairava that have been declared by the Tantras. I'll tell you a little. Yat kinchit sakalam rupam. I'll tell you a little more about these forms of Bhairava as revealed by the Tantras. So it's interesting. Shiva is talking to Shakti now about Bhairava. Bhairava is teaching about Bhairava to Bhairavi. So it's kind of complicated from that point of view. So putting aside the format of the text, let's just get the teaching. Understand this, O goddess. Tad asarataya devi vigyeyam shakrajalavat maya swapnopamam chaiva gandharva nagara brahmam. So understand this, O goddess, that those manifest forms are without essence. Indeed, they're like Indra's net. Shakrajala. Like they're just like Indra's net. And by the way, Indra's net is Maya. And it's supposed to be like this magic. Indra has this sort of Jara magic, he can do this illusion. It's Indra's illusion power. So they're all just like an illusion. They're nothing more than dreams. Maya swapno pamam. You know what they're like? They're like a city of fairies in the clouds. Gandharva nagara brahmam. How beautiful. Like Lord Shiva is basically invalidating all the stuff that Lord Shiva himself taught us in literally the rest of the entire tantric world. Isn't that so interesting? Like, it's like he taught this to us. Like, he's the one who taught us all the stuff. All these Bhairava forms, Navatma, Bhairava, all this stuff. And now he's saying, it's not real. It's all Maya. And it's like a city of fairies in the sky. It's like a dream. The whole thing is like a dream. It's either like magic, like a magic show. Indra's net is like an illusion. Or it's like a dream. Or it's like a fantasy. A city of Gandharvas. How beautiful, right? To realize like everything we take so seriously should not be taken so seriously. This is my whole problem, by the way. People are very upset because I don't take things seriously. I can't. They're nothing but a city of fairies in the sky. It's nothing but a dream. It's nothing but Maya. All those things that you hold dear and sacred, I'm sorry, I'm going to be irreverent about them because they're not real to me. None of them are real because the real is real. And these are all just make-believe, but not without value. That's why I still do it. If it had no value, why would I do it? I do it, but the way I do it is with a lot of lightness and lightheartedness and frivolity. Because, here it is, the Shastra Pramana. It's nothing more to me than, and it should be nothing more to you than just a city of... So then people ask me puja questions, seriously. They're like, what if I do this and if I do that? I could laugh at you. I could laugh at you and you should laugh at me. Not that you should not ask the question. Not that I should not supply an answer if it's known to me. If the grace of Devi is there, we can ask and we can answer. But we giggle the whole time because who cares to know? Who cares to ask? And yet... it's worth knowing, it's worth asking, but it's no big deal. It's NBD. That's the first thing we have to learn in Shaivism. It's literally no big deal. And plus, you're Shiva. Like, relax. Like what the fuck? Relax. That's the TLDR of the lectures. Like, relax. And because you're so relaxed, then it makes sense to do puja and things like that. Not before, because before you're relaxed, puja becomes like a very big deal and it's problematic. Religion becomes a big deal. And look, here's the problem. If you want joy, and the way that you're trying to get joy is not itself joyful, what joy then can you produce? So if you grit your teeth, if your religion looks like this, what will you get? Won't you just get more of... And that's why like all these priests are like horny celibates, like depressed and angry and judgmental and condescending, because that's what the kind of spirituality they do looks like. It looks like shame and guilt and I'm not good enough and these are standards that we have to hold each other to, and if you're bad and you're good and you're higher up and you're lower down and this is responsible and take this responsibility, take this seriously. Okay, if you say all of that, you become very grumpy, and that's okay, that's a leela too. But in the Shaiva world we say, why not have a religion of joy, of bliss, of ananda? And if you're happy when you practice, then the attainment of that practice will be happiness. How can happiness produce sorrow? And how can sorrow produce happiness? It's a categorical error. How can counting up numbers give you the color purple or the color blue? And how can mixing colors give you the number 8? It won't work. At least 6, 7 are like numbers. This is not even that. This is like red 82 or something. Like, that sounds like a kind of dye that the government would ban or some shit. Like, it's not important to do puja. Therefore, we can do puja. Literally nothing matters. And that's why people get scared, because of nihilism. Sort of this feeling of, but look at, there's something that matters. But it's not this. It's not what you learned in the tantras. So these are without essence. Indeed, they're like Indra's net, mere dreams, like the city of Gandharvas in the sky. And then this is kind of funny. He says, Dhyanartam bhranta buddhi nam kriya dambara vartinam kevalam varnitam pumsham vikalpa nihatatmanam. They are spoken of only to help the meditations of those whose intellects are confused. Bhranta buddhi nam. Those whose buddhis are bhranta, in error. So only those whose intellects are fucked, only for those people are these things offered to help them with their meditation. Or for those who are busy with kriya, ritual actions. And for those who are mixed up in thought constructs, vikalpa nihatatmanam, those atmanas, those beings, those people who are caught up in vikalpas, for those pumshams, for those people, this sort of thing is a lone thought. So if we are those people, and we are, those of us whose intellects are confused, or those of us who are caught up with pujas, those of us who are mired in thought constructs, then we do Shivaratri in a very different way, right? Then it's like, oh, I gotta do this and I gotta do that. If I don't do this, then I'm not holy. And if I don't observe this rule, if I don't observe that rule, it's like, oh no. But that's helpful still. That's helpful because there's still someone for whom that's going to be helpful. So we don't throw it out. But now we come to this. This is the teaching. First, the Neti teaching. Actually, he says, tattvate, na navatmaso shabdarashir, na bhairavaha, na chaso trishira devo, na cha shakti trayatmakaha. Actually, that Bhairava is not ninefold, nor is it the Shabdarashi, nor is it the three-headed god, nor is it the triad of powers. Basically, he's rejecting any of these concepts as being capable of describing Bhairava. Not that these concepts are not Bhairava, it's just that Bhairava is not exhausted by them. Nada bindu mayo vapi, na chandradha nirodikaha, na chakra krama sambhino, na cha shakti swarupakaha. It is not nada, nor is it bindu, nor is it the ardha chandra, nor is it nirodika. It is not divided into the sequence of letters, nor is he even just shakti, power. Aprabuddha mati nam hi eta balavibhishikaha mathirmodaka vat sarvam pravrityartam udahritam. Indeed, these things are like for those whose intellects are not awakened, like the scary stories told to disciplined children, or like the sweets that the mother gives. All of it has been said to encourage them to practice. Not that they are without value, but just remember, they're for children. Everything thus far is for children. And isn't this what Swami Vivekananda says? He says, books, dogmas, rituals, they're but the kindergarten of religion. It's a remarkable thing how Swamiji almost one-to-one is quoting this text, but maybe inadvertently. He's saying, books, these books that we value, that we love, that we for 9,000 years have memorized and orally transmitted and passed down throughout the lineage, these books are like secondary. Books, dogmas means like what we believe in and what we hold to be true. Books, dogmas, rituals. Oh my God, we spend so much time learning puja, like Homa. Books, dogmas, rituals, these are but secondary details. They're but the kindergarten of religion. Doesn't mean we don't go to kindergarten. We still have to go to kindergartens. I don't know. I don't know if you do have to go, if you have to go to kindergarten, but sometimes you like, yeah, exactly. So it's like you go there, but you don't stay there. Right? So it's like it's something, but it's not everything. So these are all just kindergarten religion. And this is what Shiva is saying too. It's like sweets that the mother gives you to get you to do the right thing. Or like scary stories, like frighten you away from doing something that might be bad for you. But it's not that there is the ghost there. The mother just says so. And the sweet also is just to cajole you. Now, the ultimate reality, this comes the iti iti part. So the first part was neti neti. It's not this, it's not that. Now comes the iti iti part. Dikkala kalanon mukta desho deshad visheshani. Vyapadeshtu mashakyasav akatya paramatataha. The ultimate reality is akatya. It's unspeakable. And it's undefinable. It's non-locatable, and it is dikkala kalanon mukta desha udesha shiveshini. It's like avesh dikkala, like without directions. Dikkala meaning time, so without space and time. It is beyond all space and time. It is non-locatable. There's no desha. There's no place in which you can find it. It's non-locatable, beyond time and space. It's akatya. You can't even say what it is. And vyapadeshtu, it's unspeakable and undefinable. And this is very reminiscent of Mandukya Upanishad verse 7. Avevaharam, adrishyam, like that. You can't see it, you can't define it, it's useless, you can't use it. It's not an object to be used, or a thing to be taught, or a reality to be revealed. It is unspeakable. But now we'll speak of it. Oh Bhairavi, the essence of Bhairava is the inner bliss of one's own experience. Oh Bhairavi, hey Bhairavi. Anta svanubhavananda vikalpo mukta gochara. Gochara means the field. So the field that is free of all vikalpana. The field free of all thought constructs, which is your own inner self. The bliss of your own self-experience. That state, Ya avastha bharitakara, which is the maker of fullness, or which is full. He Bhairavi Bhairavatmanaha. That Atman, the self, which is the bliss of one's own inner self-experience, the field free of all thought constructs, that state is ever full. Know this, O Bhairavi, to be what we mean by the word Bhairava. So screw your deities. Fuck your Kali and your Shiva. Fuck your Krishna and your Jesus. Fuck your Buddha. These are all just bubbles arising in the ocean that I am. Swamiji, he didn't say it this way. I don't think he used the word fuck quite as much. But he would say something like Krishna and Jesus and Buddha or something are but bubbles. This is from the Thousand Islands Parks lecture. Are bubbles arising in the ocean of I am. He doesn't mean me, Naren. He means I am, which is who he really is and what you really are, what we all are, what alone is. So who cares about all these like deities? They are just thoughts. They are vikalpas. And so this is a very interesting bhava, right? To say, Kali, who are you? In fact, I only created you. I only in my own mind have projected this world, and I've projected this world. Now there's this crazy goddess doing this, doing that. I was that the whole time. That I am Kali. Verily the drunkard, having drunk wine, says, I am Kali, I am Kali. Shri Ramakrishna said that to M in one conversation. The gopi who meditates on Krishna says, I am Krishna. Krishnoham. And the bhakta who meditates on Kali goes, I am that actually. I am Kali. The whole time I was Kali. So you recognize something in Kali that resonates with you. But that whole process is a vikalpa, and that vikalpa is happening within the bliss of one's own experience. And in the very Shaiva coded Yoga Vasishta Sara especially, there's this opening line, Dikkala Dhyanana Chinna, it says, Swa Anubhutyam Ekam Anayam. How do you know this reality, which is Dikkala, which is beyond all Dik and Kala? It is Swa Anubhutyam, Swa Anubhutyam Ekam Anayam. It's, how do you translate? It's proved, it's pramana, it's proved by one's own experiencing. So one's own experience proves it. You can't point to it, you can't speak it, you can't locate it, you can't define it, but you don't have to. You can't know it, but it's the knower, it's more than known. So there's no question about it. It's not like we're saying none of these things are real. There is something really real, more real than all these things that we took to be real. And that is what I am. The bliss, ananda, which is the fullness of my own self-experience, sva anubhava, my inner self, anta sva anubhavananda. That's the functional definition of the word Bhairava in this text. So who is Shiva? Yes, you can worship him as a deity, no doubt, but don't ever forget that the deity which we are calling Shiva is a mirror, nothing more. That vikalpa called Shiva is a mirror from my very own essence nature. This is the highest teaching of Shaivism, that Shiva is you, and not just you, it is everybody and everything. That Shiva is blessed because it's without parts, avibhaga, it's undivided. And it's undivided because it's the anta sva anubhavananda vikalpon mukta gochara. Remember Rumi in the Coleman Barks translation? He says something like, beyond the field of right and wrong, beyond notions of right and wrong, there is a field. Meet me there. That's Shiva, the spaciousness. That's why he's in Mount Kailash. That's why he's in the cremation ground. Because in that state, which is ever full, that Bhairava is beyond all thought constructs. So think of cities. Cities, are really nothing more than a conglomeration of thoughts. Like society, the word world, I think the word comes from the Norse word, right? Like verold, as in werewolf. Werewolf means wolf man. So verold means man world, meaning a world of concepts. The world is not necessarily nature. The world is our interpretation of nature. And in fact, even on one level, nature is nothing but our reading of reality. So that world is represented by the city. Shiva doesn't live in the city. He lives in the smashan. And in the smashan, the cremation ground, is where all those concepts are destroyed, reduced to their essence. And not just that, Shiva lives in Mount Kailash. He transcends the world and lives in wasteland, baby. That idea, that he is free of vikalpas and he lives in spaciousness like the sky. He's in the gochara, free of all thought constructs. And that place is your own self, actually. Which is blissful because it's full. That's called Bhairava. So Bhairava or Shiva here means that. So verse 15 gives us the definition of Bhairava. Not any deity, but the deity that is your very own self. Then he continues, Tad vapustatvato gyeyam vimalam vishvapuranam evam vide pare tatve ka puja kascha tripyati. The form of that reality is to be known as stainless and all-pervading, meaning you're free now and nothing can make you less than or more than you are. So that form of reality is to be known as stainless and all-pervading. Vimala, without mala. Vimala and vishvapuranam, it's everywhere, it's established everywhere. When reality is like this, evam vide pare tatve ka puja kascha tripyati, who is to be worshipped? Who is to be satisfied? So when this is God, when this is reality, then who do you have to worship? Who will be upset if you don't do your puja? Who is receiving the puja? Who is giving the puja? Tripyati, kascha tripyati, who will be satisfied? Ka puja, what puja? What worship? Who can be worshipped? That's the profound idea. Okay, now, this actually you can read it in two ways. I want to take it in a Swamiji direction, if you don't mind, a Swami Vivekananda direction, which is a bit more in keeping with our lineage. So, when reality is stainless and all-pervading, when it's like this, then who is worshipped? Who is to be satisfied? Actually, can anybody answer the question? Who is to be worshipped? Who is to be satisfied? Because in one sense, you could say no one. You could say, well, then I won't do puja. Who is there to do puja too? No, I think there's a better answer here. Who is there to be worshipped? See? Yeah. Who is that though? Who is there to be worshipped? Yeah, exactly. Kalidasi. Kali in there. Kalidasi is there. Kali is coming in Kalidasi form, Virupakshi form, Grasini form, Viranatha. Like literally everyone and everything. The answer to this question, who is there to be worshipped? Who is there to be satisfied? The answer is more like what the Buddha taught us. Me and you. Like, notice this, right? Fuck God. That's the teaching. Like, literally, fuck God. The whole thing about God is a delusion. It's like nothing but sweets given to children to get them to do the right thing. It's like, I hope Asha is eating some good sweets. No, mother is taking back her sweets. She's like, oh yeah? Nishant, you don't want sweets? I gave you sweets and you saying you don't want them? Fine, I will eat them then. So mother is eating her sweets. The look on your face also as you eat the sweets, like. But this, what is it then to say God? It's like, ideally you mean reality. And reality, by reality you mean consciousness. And by consciousness you mean literally everything that appears within consciousness. So the teaching here is what Swamiji is presenting first and foremost as the highest revelation of the lineage. God is, and there's no God, there's no atheism here. It's not saying God is not. God is, but God is maximally in all things, as all things. That means what we're suggesting is not humanitarianism. We're not saying that. Actually, quite the opposite. We should not worship humans. That's where the danger comes. Because humans are temporal beings. They come and they go. Animals, temporal beings. They come and they go. That atemporal, aspatial reality is appearing as a human or manifesting as a human. That is to be worshipped. So how do you worship Shiva? Literally your DJ set. Literally your cobbling of shoes. Literally your killing of soldiers on the battlefield. As Shri Krishna tells Arjuna to do. That's the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. That's the teaching of Swami Vivekananda. Basically, the teaching is that like literally anything that you do, that's going to be puja. And anybody that you satisfy is puja. And that's why it's better to do puja to like cats and stuff, because they will actually eat your food. The deity on the altar might not eat your food and the whole thing becomes like a vikalpa. It's not as real. I mean, it's still valuable. It's still helpful. But it's not as real as maybe going out and feeding somebody. This is a bhava, right? I love puja, by the way. I do a lot of puja every day. And I just love it. I love offering flowers and incense and fire. And I love worshipping Kali. And you know, I can still do that. Because that's not different from this. But notice this. If I don't get to do my puja today, and instead I go and talk to Bhairavanandaji over Raman, and I feel like, I didn't do my puja, then I'm an absolute fucking moron. What's my problem? What, the Raman isn't God? Bhairavanand isn't God? I cannot in that moment worship God in the form of Bhairavanand by saying something that makes him feel happy. I can't make him laugh. If I can make one person laugh or smile, then I've done my puja. The whole purpose of my puja was to delight the Divine Mother, to please the Divine Mother. That was my purpose. Who is there who is not the Divine Mother? If I can please one person, if I can make one animal feel happy, I should feel satisfied. I've done my puja for the day. And then notice the whole day is an opportunity to do uninterrupted puja. So we say puja is very cheap because there's a time when the ritual starts and there's a time when a ritual ends. And they can still be done. Those are valuable. But we want puja to be more than just puja. We want meditation to be more than meditation. That's why it's like almost impossible to make spiritual progress in this day and age without this teaching. Because we don't have all day long to sit and meditate. So then we better make use of when we're walking around the world, and this is how we do it. We realize there's never a time when I'm not meditating, because by meditating I mean thinking of God, sitting and thinking of God. But when is it possible for me to not do that? When every thought that arises in my mind is God. When am I not having darshan of God? When everybody and everything that I see is nothing more and nothing less than God. And so the claim here is that if I recognize this, then I'm always meditating, I'm always doing puja. This is the spirituality that's being suggested here. And notice it's all inclusive, nothing is rejected. Because even puja is not rejected, it's only expanded. The concept of puja has expanded. This is perhaps the most thrilling idea. So how do you worship the non-dual Shiva? The answer is like this, like how do you not? What is there that is not Shiva? That's why I don't like the word Kali or Shiva, because you can't say Kali, you can't say Shiva. I like the word Brahman, I like the word Shiva, I love the word Kali, all equally, Krishna, whatever. Because they all mean this reality, which we know is now defined as this. Antaha sva anubhavananda, the bliss of one's own self-experience. And in that state, one is full. Okay. Evam vidha bhairavasya yavasta parigiyate sa para pararupena para devi prakirtita. This is the state of Bhairava that is sung as the supreme and is said to be of the form Paradevi, the transcendent goddess. So it's important. Bhairava has been defined as consciousness, and consciousness is being defined as Paradevi, the goddess. Shaktiman, so Shakti Matur Yadvad, Abheda Sarvadasitaha, Atastad Dharma Dharmi, Tvat Para Shakti Paramatmanaha. So the Dharma and the Dharmi, the attribute and the one to whom the attribute is attributed are non-different. The power and the one who possesses the power are always decidedly non-different. The attribute and the possessor of the attribute can never be separate. And so the supreme power, Paradevi, is the very self of the absolute. That is Bhairava. So I've put a note here to another text. One of my favorite texts, actually, the Mahanaya Prakasha. These are all the Shakta texts within the most esoteric Kaula forms of Shaivism. So here's what we get. Shiva Swabhavaiva Shaktihi na Vastvantaram Etyekameva Shiva Vyapadeshyam Shakti Vyapadeshyam Cha Vastu Tattvam na Purvam Kinchit. The essential nature of Shiva is Shakti. There is no separate reality. That which is called Shiva and that which is called Shakti is verily the same thing. And this essential reality is wholly ordinary and not something bizarre. I just want to focus on that last line. Cha and Vastu Tattvam. This reality is na purvam kinchit. It's not anything weird or like ancient or like mysterious or bizarre. In fact, it's pretty mundane. And this is not to cheapen it. It's actually to make the mundane real. Makes real the mundane is actually really extraordinary. So what is this reality? What is not this reality? Yes, absolutely. Okay, hold on. Let me see. Somebody will drop it in the chat probably. Okay, so now we have this very important idea that Shakti is same as Shiva, but Shiva is same as Bhairava. So Bhairava, Shakti and Shiva, they're all now being used interchangeably, but the logic is being given. Because if Shakti is considered the energy, then Shaktiman, Shiva, is the one who is energized. So he is energetic and his energy is Shakti. Or he is hot and the heat is Shakti. But this is very important. You cannot separate the possessor of the attribute from the attribute. So what ends up happening here is very important. There's a logic, there's a reasoning being given for why Shiva and Shakti are the same. Because you cannot think of milk without the whiteness. So that's verse 18. She is the essence of who he is. And this Paramatmanaha, she is the essence of Shiva, the self of Shiva. So Navanhirdahika Shakti Vyatirikta Vibhavyate Kevalam Jnana Satayam Prarambhoyam Praveshane. Just as fire and its heat can never be thought of as separate, consciousness and its power are not separate. This is the beginning of the entrance. Pravesha means like to enter, right? So Pravesha, this is the beginning. Pravesha Prarambhoyam. This is the beginning of the entrance into the essence. So this is like transitioning now from philosophy into a kind of practice, because we're learning how to praveshana, how to enter into this reality called Bhairava. But the way to enter it is to realize this: Shakti and Shiva are non-different. Form and formless are non-different. The immanent and the transcendence are non-different. This is the beginning, the first step to entering into this reality. Having entered the state of Shakti, Shaktya-avastha pravishtasya, avishtasya, Nirvibhagena bhavana, having entered the state of Shakti, while contemplating this non-difference, one becomes Shiva. And therefore it is said that Shakti is the gateway to Shiva. Tadaso Shivarupi. She is Shivarupi. She is the form Shiva. Syat Shaivi Mukha Mehochate. This is a key term in the tradition. Shaivi Mukha Ehochate. So Mukha meaning face. Ehochate. It is said. Eha Uchyate. Eha Uchyate. This is said that she is the face of Shiva. So, Syat Shaivi Mukha Mohochate. So, when I think of Shiva, I don't. Right? How can I think of Shiva? Who is the one thinking of Shiva? Shiva! Shiva, am thinking of Shiva? What nonsense. I don't think of Shiva. I cannot think of Shiva. Shiva is not to be thought of. He is, again, you saw, Vikalpa, Vikalpon Mukta Gochara. He is the field beyond all Vikalpa. So then who can I think of? As a Shaiva who wants to think of Shiva, what face will I think of? Now, if I think of a blue guy sitting on a meditation mat with jata, holding a trident, That's Ma actually. Because by Ma, we're talking about form. So whether male or female, it makes no difference. Ma is literally any thought I can think. And every thought that I think is Ma. So I'm never not thinking about Shiva. But when I want to actually contemplate Shiva, then it makes sense for me to think of Shakti. Because Shakti, as it says in our Shiva text, she's the essence of Shiva. And in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, it says that she's the face of Lord Shiva. Therefore, we can say this is the Shakta text or Kaula text. It's by Shaivas, for Shaivas, but it's within the Shaiva tradition towards the left. So it's a Kaula text, left leaning. And again, remember, I'm defining Vamachara not as offering this or that. That's a very cheap reading of Vamachara. It's not true. But you see, our attitude is not like that. Our attitude is just like we like to have fun. We like to live life. Why? Because we don't see it as contradicting our spirituality. That's the point. And maybe this is only valuable after a lot of Shaiva Siddhanta. God knows I've had my Puritanism. Years and years and years of strict vegetarianism and strict like participation in any fun, I guess you could say, in the worldly sense, because the spiritual stuff was really fun. And then I realized, the degenerates of the left are not necessarily that way because of offering certain substances. Some of them might not even offer those substances. It's not about that. Vamachara, we say, this is very important, is not about this kind of offering or that kind of offering, although it's often defined in that way. It's not about cremation ground or internal or external practice. It's really about worshipping the goddess, because she's Vamakshi, Vamangi. So Vamachara is any goddess-oriented practice. So the Kaula Marga or the Vamachara will naturally be a flavor of Shaivism where immanence and non-duality are going to be expressed as the highest reality. Kaula, meaning Kula, embodied. That being the case though, naturally you're going to get claims like this, that she is the face of Lord Shiva, she is the essence of Lord Shiva. These are Shakta leading texts. They're within the Shaiva world, but they're still Shakta, you see. So she's not different from Shiva. She's not higher than Shiva, but she becomes the most important thing about Shiva. Why? Because I can't think of Shiva. And the only way to think of Shiva is through a lingam, or through a guy sitting on a mat meditating, or through a mantra. Aren't these all forms? Aren't these all thoughts? The mantra is a thought. The lingam is a thought given form, whether I meditate upon it or bathe it. And by the way, in my family, it's kind of the case that when they meditate, they often only think of abstract things. Like when you come to see my house, the influence that I brought to my father's side of the family, the Shaiva Siddhanta household, is more imagery. I started putting up like pictures of Dakshinamurti, Shiva. You should see what the ashram looks like after my grandfather kicked the body and after I took it. Like once I started getting there, now there are carpets on the floor. Before it was just like the cement floor, there was no carpet. Now I got some like nice Kashmiri rugs in there. I got Dakshina Murti on this northward facing wall looking south. I put a big Durga in there, a big Kali in there. Now all these images are coming. But in my grandfather's days, that ashram was just a lingam. I kid you not. There was just one lingam in there and the whole thing is just painted blue. The walls are blue and it's just like spacious and shit. Like that's it. It was just very minimal. And so you could argue that the lingams in my lineage, they only meditated upon lingams, if that even. They were Shaivas. They were Shaivas in the sense of Sri Chakra is maybe as far as we would go in terms of any kind of symbolic worship. But then we pour every day there's Abhishayam, especially Mondays, there's Abhishayam. But the Abhishayam is to a lingam, and that lingam is a solid abstract representation of the void, of the absolute. Vyoma Vyapine, Vyoma Rupaya. All of our texts refer to Shiva as void. So you can't really think of Shiva, but you still need something to focus the mind on. So the lingam is the bare minimum maybe. Now I've brought all sorts of things into the room, but even before that, it wasn't just empty. There was a lingam. But that lingam itself is Shakti. Because Shakti here means form. Now, we get a very deep idea. Everything is your face. Everything is the face of Shakti. Why? Because everything is reminding you of you. So you're looking at yourself whenever you look at anything. So here, when we think of Shiva, we think of Shakti. And it's better to think of Shakti because Shakti is the face of Lord Shiva. And therefore, it is said that Shakti is the gateway to Lord Shiva. So it says here, having entered the state of Shakti while contemplating this non-difference, one becomes Shiva. And therefore, it is said that Shakti is the gateway to Shiva. So Mukha can mean face, but it can also mean gateway. So it's the gateway to Shiva, the face of Shiva. To look at Shiva is to look at Shakti. So just like the light of a lamp and the rays of the sun, yatha lokena deepasya kiranayar bhaskarasya cha gyayate digvibhag adi tadvat shaktya Shiva priye. Just like by the light of the lamp or the rays of the sun, the divisions of space are known. By Shakti, Shiva is known, O dear one. So this is such an important point because it's all of this is about practice. He's saying, I've already told you what Shiva is, but that might not help you very much. But you want to know about Shiva, so I'll tell you this. Just be with Shakti. Look at your own face. I mean, if you want to be Shiva, look at your face. What is your face? Shakti. It's remarkable, actually. And it's like, what does a Shaiva do then? On this side of the fence, it seems like a Shaiva just thinks of Ma. But then it's so interesting. If you identify with Kali, you'll think of Shiva. And if you identify with Shiva, you'll think of Kali. And that's how you get this very beautiful tradition of like literally practicing this. And that's where it gets complicated. That's where Sri Ramakrishna suggests the Matra Bhav. Where he says, when you look upon Kali, think of her as your mother. Therefore, if you as a heterosexual male look upon a woman, think of her as your mother. But in the Shaiva world, that's not the only bhava available, although it's the one that Sri Ramakrishna prescribes for the Kali Yuga for the sake of like preventing attachment and all manner of controversy. But there's also the mood of, if you're Shiva, then you fall in love with yourself, who is Kali. But you have to remember always that what you're loving is not outside of you. And vice versa. If you identify as Kali, you fall in love with Shiva. And then every relationship, you Shiva and Shaktify. So if you're in like a spouse-consort relationship, then you Shiva and Shaktify that way. Or if you're in a friend relationship, or husband and wife, or brother and sister, or like a, I don't know, guru and student relationship, whatever the case may be, you just bring this theory into it. Look at yourself by looking at the other. But the other is non-different from yourself. So the best way to look at yourself is to see it reflected. The whole practice is a Vimarsha Shakti kind of practice. It's remarkable. The logic of it is so beautiful. So having said that then, through Shakti, Shiva is known. So how will you know Shiva? You are Shiva. So how will you interact with yourself? Through how you reflect yourself to yourself. Deva Deva Trishulanka Kapala Krita Bhushana Digdesha Kala Shunya Cha Vyapadesha Vivarjita. O God of gods, you appear as bearing a trident and as adorned with skull ornaments. Kapala Krita Bhushana. Or you, O Lord, you look like you're holding a trident and a skull. And yet, Digdesha Kala Shunya, you are void of all directionality, space and time, beyond all designation and definition. Vyapadesha Vivarjita. So now she's realizing a new aspect of her Lord. She's saying, oh my God, this whole time, I thought you were a guy holding a trident and a skull bowl. Look, I could cry thinking about this. But it's like, is this really Shiva and Shakti? Or is this a lineage holder, a guru, sitting in the smashan with his disciple, with his consort even, and just having a conversation? It's like really remarkable, because here Shiva is not the guy holding the trident and the skull, but the guy holding the trident and the skull was telling this girl about this Shiva, and this girl realized the truth, and she looks at the guy and she's like, oh, I see it now. Avachinamova likramayata marichi sankramana vevaiko guruhu. There was only one guru. You were never my guru, actually. You were this guy, and I thought you were my guru holding the trident and the skull bowl, but actually, what came through you was the guru, the transmission. And because of that transmission, tat upalabdameva tattvameko devaha. Because of that transmission, I have attained the reality which is verily called God. And what is that reality called God? It is without direction. It is without time. It cannot be divided. It is without definition. Non-locatable. So in this verse 22, she gets it. She hears what he's saying and she like reflects it back to him. She's like, oh, you are holding a skull and a trident? Oh God of gods, you are actually empty. But notice she's saying it's not you, but it's like beyond you. And in fact, what you are is beyond all space and time, not confined to any form. So she asks this next question. So now she knows this, right? But she asks, Yavasta baritakara bhairavasya upalabhyate kairupayayar mukham tasya para devi katam bhavet yatha samyagaham vedmi tatha me bruhi bhairava. By what means is that state of fullness called Bhairava to be attained? Since you yourself told me that Para Devi is its doorway, since you said she is the mukha, tasya para devi katam bhavet, you said that she is the mukha, the face of Lord Shiva. Having said that then, by what means is this state of fullness called Bhairava to be attained? Yatha samyagaham vedmi tatha me bruhi Bhairava. So that I may truly understand, or rather integrate the teaching, tell me, O Bhairava. And then the practices begin. So these are all the opening verses. It's just good to review them, because everything you need is already there in the opening verses. Everything else is just to stabilize what you heard. So the first part of the text is called the Jnana. What do you call it? Like a pada, I guess. Jnana pada, there's a yoga pada, there's a kriya pada, there's a charya pada. Jnana pada means the section on philosophy. And it's all you needed, actually. Everything else is just to stabilize that philosophy. But the philosophy is itself the practice. You're just contemplating your true nature. So I want to close now, open for some questions. But I just want to close with like a direct path teaching, as it were, which should reveal that reality to us right now, right here. And then every practice that will come after will make sense. There's a very subtle practice, beautiful mantra kind of practices and visualization practices and whatnot, mundane practices, dream yoga practices, lots of stuff. But let me just now present the teaching. It was already presented. Lord Shiva already kind of gave the teaching, but there are a few other ways that we can do it. I'll just like present it, and then we'll see how the implications of this direct path teaching is carried through for the rest of the text. Okay. So this is exciting because this is the kind of pointing out. So it should be revealed. And when it's revealed, in the light of that revelation, all our problems go away. Remember, if you're asking any questions about practice, we're acting like children. Children need sweets. They need goblin stories. Religion is for children. Spirituality is for children. And there's nothing wrong with being a child. That's the point. It's not condescending to say so. Oh, like, this is for children. This is kindergarten. Wait, maybe I'm a child. Maybe I should go to kindergarten. Nothing wrong with that. But what I'm going to teach now, what Shiva has taught now, is not for children. This is for those who are ready to hear the highest teaching. And it's sometimes disappointing because you're like, wait, I want there to be a mantra. I want there to be some formal diksha. I want there to be a hierarchy. I want there to be rules. I want there to be an institution. And then you realize, oh my God, there are none of these things. And more importantly, I want to be broken. I want to have a problem. We all want to have a problem. And spirituality is a good way to create problems for ourselves. I didn't do my puja. I didn't meditate. Oh no, I ate onions. I ate a piece of garlic. No. Like, spirituality is, yeah, right? It's like a way that we make problems in our life. This kind of spirituality that we're going to offer now shows you that you have no right to have a problem anymore. Like, that's what you don't want, actually. You don't want the spirituality because you don't want to not have a problem. But also, the problem with this is, after learning it, you shouldn't have problems anymore. Then what happens if you have a problem? Then it's like it didn't work, you see? So this kind of thing, if it works, then from this point on, you'll never have a problem again. If it doesn't work, that's okay. 112 practices are going to be given to help us, like, stabilize it, okay? So here we go. The direct path teaching. So right now, there's one fact that we cannot deny. In fact, there is only one fact which we cannot deny. Every other fact can be denied. For example, if I'm looking at something, how do I know my eyes are accurately reporting to me what I'm looking at? Haven't I seen a stick in water appear to be bent when I know it to be straight? Haven't I seen a shimmering in the distance and thought that it was a body of water only to realize later that it was a mirage? Haven't I seen a snake only to think that it was a rope? You know, like, this is a, sorry, that's funny. I'm just going to leave that there, that inversion. So, like, there are all these errors, right? Like, errors of sight. Like, there are errors of hearing, errors of smelling, tasting, touching. There's optical illusions, audio illusions, all of that. So I don't actually know that the world is as I see it. In fact, if I say, what color is, I don't know, let's see. I'm trying to find something that's like, okay, what color is this? Black, right? It's black, I think. So I'm going to call it black. What color is black? And then you say, how do I know that by black we mean the same thing? What if I were to swap visions with you and your black is actually my red, but you learned that it was called black? So when you were in kindergarten, you saw the color and you were like, oh, that's black because your teacher told you. But what you're seeing is red. I'm seeing this and I'm calling it black. You don't know actually what other people are seeing. So even when we use words that corroborate each other's experience, we don't really know. So we can't know what other people are experiencing. We don't even know if there are other people. I don't know if what I'm seeing is actually what's there. I'm just hallucinating it. I don't know any of this, but I do know this. If I doubt any of these things, to use Descartes here, the cogito is good for this teaching, then I must at least know that I'm doubting. I must at least know that I am. Because if I doubt anything, at least I exist as the doubter. So here's the only fact of this moment that I can be sure about. I am. Because it's the only fact that confirms itself upon the doubt. Everything else, when I doubt it, I know that there's something wrong or doubtful about it, but I don't know how to resolve that. Here, the very fact that I can doubt it proves it. And what is it? It's me. Notice this. It's the most me there can be. Like, the sense of me is the sense of being here, of being present, of being aware. Okay, that's the first step. The first step is to just acknowledge that I am. That's a huge step, actually. The moment you do that, you're already taking a step back from all the objects and starting to identify with the subject. I am. And I am this. I feel like I'm this. But what is this? It's this experience. Now let's analyze the experience. What am I experiencing? Well, I'm experiencing the world around me. I can see all of you, and I can see the books and the cups, and I feel the temperature of the air around me. I can hear the frat boys and sorority girls and party people outside who will soon join. Like, I can hear all of them. I can hear the sounds. I can smell. I can have these experiences. But I'm also experiencing the body, and I'm experiencing my thoughts. So now here I am, indubitably present, and before me is presented a world of thoughts, sensations, and objects, and people. And all of that is appearing before me. And all of that is changing. The body is changing, the mind is changing, life is changing, people are coming and going. I live in a very different place now than I was born. Like, how much has changed in my life? And how much is changing and how much will change? All of that is coming and going. Yet, although my mind is changing, my body is changing, although the world is changing, notice, there's one thing which doesn't change. So there's one thing that I cannot doubt, and that thing is actually quite consistent. It's remained the same the whole time. Throughout my whole life, it is the one who was aware of that change, who was there when the body was a baby's body, was there when the body is now a young man's body, who will be there, hopefully, Ma willing, when the body is an old man's body, and one day he will still be there when the body is gone. For he is here now, and I cannot think of him not being here. You know, you can't even think of your own death. Like, there's no way to think of a time when you weren't. You can't. The remarkable thing about it is that there was no time when you didn't exist, because you just cannot imagine it. You cannot even conjure up what it would be like to not exist. So the claim here is simple. I must have always existed, and I probably will always exist, because I consistently am, even in the midst of all the change. So these are two facts. One, I exist indubitably, and two, I exist unchangingly. But the moment I say that, notice the third fact comes up. The I that we're talking about here cannot be those things that are changing, because that's not actually what I feel. I feel myself to be the same one. And yet, despite that feeling, I say I am this changing body, or I say I am this changing mind, or I identify with this changing world. In fact, those things that change, I'm aware that they're changing. So they're just objects to me. And I, the subject, am not changed, even though they, the objects, are changing. That's the third step. Now the fourth step. This indubitable self, which I am, which never changes. The third step is I recognize that I am not the changing things. No, we haven't yet, because Buddhists will deny the self, right? They will say there's no self. They'll say this thing also doesn't exist. We say, how ridiculous. How can you say, Mamo Dreka Netito? How can you say there's no self when it is to the self that this revelation occurs? Right? Like, that's why. And Buddhists will say, no, that's not what we're actually saying. And we're like, then come on and say it. Like, to whom does the Buddha nature reveal itself, if not to the Buddha? That's why we think Buddhism is philosophically disingenuous. But the Buddha doesn't mind us saying that, because they're not interested in a philosophy. Buddhists are not trying to philosophically present any ideas necessarily. They make a show of it, but it's not actually, they don't actually mean it. They are trying to empty, see, the Buddhists are trying to empty philosophy of its meaning. And what remains will be the revelation. Nothing needs to be said about it. That's why even in the most philosophical Buddhism, like say Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karaka, they have no philosophy to present. You say, hey, Buddhists, what are your views? They'll be like, whatever they are, they're just not yours. Like, the Buddhists will say, show me your view, and I will chop it to shreds, and they will too. They're the masters of logic. And then when we say, okay, fine, you've proved us wrong, what's your view? They'll be like, hee hee. You know? They'll be like, hey, you guys, let's worship gods. And we're like, wait. Buddhism is not Buddhisming right now. Like, you guys just... First you told us the Vedas weren't real, the self is not real, and oh my god. He's like, let's go to Kashi, bro. He's like, leave the mlechas to their Kali Yuga. Let's go to Kashi. He's like, they won't get it anyway, let's go. I'm kidding, we're just joking. Anyway, it's funny because I'm talking about Buddhism now, so we're getting into some... Yeah. So like, what then is the what then is the claim of Buddhism? Essentially nothing. And that's the wisdom of it. It's like anything you claim will just be an object. So you say, okay, not this, which is what Shankara is doing, but this is where it gets interesting. Now comes step 4 or 5 or something, I forget where we are in the sequence. This is where it gets interesting. 4, right? So I can't be the body, because I know that I am, indubitably I am, and I know that I'm unchanging, and therefore I cannot be any of these things that are changing, and plus I'm the subject, they're all the objects. Just feel that's true now. But this is where it gets interesting. Have I ever experienced anything outside of this I amness? Now, this next step is crazy, because we're going to take a step back even from the subject. This is where it gets beautiful. At first, I said I'm not the object, I'm just the subject. Now I'm going to say, actually, I'm not even the subject. Because the objects don't even exist outside of the subject. I am a third order being, or like, a second order subject. Because there's a subject called Nishant, and to this Nishant appears Nishant's mind, Nishant's body, even the sense of Nishantness. That appears to me. But then to me appears everyone else. To me appears all the other objects. And there is no object that appears outside of me. It appears within me. So even if it's over there, it's still within me. There-ness is within me. Nishant is over here, but here-ness is also within me. So I'm stepping back from here, and I'm reclaiming there. I'm stepping back from me, and I'm reclaiming it. I'm stepping back from this little aham to the purnaham, the complete self, which contains all selves. This is the ultimate claim. What I am is that which contains within it all there is. What I am is all there is. And therefore I'm bharita, I'm full. I have to be, because within me is anything that ever could be. And that's why I say, we can say to Kali, ha ha ha, do your worst. Without me, where will you dance? That's what the joke we say to Divine, what will you do without me? And then she will look at me and say, where's your meaning without me? If you were here, Shivji, what would, and I was not, who would show you your own face? Who would delight you? Who would you look at? And then we say to her, haha, you think you're so great? I'll show you who's boss. If I'm not here, who will you dance on? You'll have no ground. And like this, they play with each other. And that's love, It's like she needs me as much as I need her. And so we worship Kali as Shiva. And we worship Shiva as Kali. She's Sarada. Sarada means the one who gives meaning. Sarada. She gives the meaning. And he is Sada Shiva, always a blessing. Eternally. What's the blessing? The being itself. He allows for the dance. And she dances, giving his being meaning. And ultimately they're not different. What's the point of a fire if it's not hot? But how can there be heat if there was no fire to emit it, to emanate it? So the two of them involve one another, and they're in love with one another, and they're in yamala with one another. And the two of them coming together in this sexual union is me. Vimala Kalashraya Abhinava Mahashishtajanani. And like Abhinava says, I praise my mother, who is Vimala, the stainless ground of ever-new Genesis. I praise my father, who is the five-headed Shiva, who is always delighting in the spontaneous play of that stainless ground. And my heart, formed from the fusion of the essence emitted from their love-making, is filled with the bliss of the highest reality. May this heart ejaculate with this joy, this outpouring of delight. For I am that consciousness which reposes in its own innate fullness and bliss, and is endowed always with the will to know and to do, in all things, as all things. May this be an offer to that Bhairava. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Bhairavarpanamastu. Okay, any questions? Maybe we'll take one or two. But I should also say this, right? Like the direct answer to the question, how do you worship the non-dual Shiva? Like this, there's no specific puja. Just whatever we do, whoever we see, recognize Shiva in that. That's all. And so you feel like whatever you do, think I'm doing this to Shiva. Or whatever, anything happens to you, say, oh, Shiva himself is doing this to me. Or when you see, I'm seeing Shiva only. Like that. That's the practice. So the Aghori then, the Bhairava, the Kapalika, I would say the Shaiva, is supposed to destroy all illusion of distinction. What is to be kept, what is to be thrown away, when everything is Shiva, like that. Yes. Okay. Yes, dear Sonuma.
Hi,
Yes,
hi
mom.
everyone. So a few things. I actually had a lot of questions, but
Oh,
a few comments.
okay, please.
Um, but I only have now at the end of this one question.
Haha, good.
But I found it funny because in the span of a couple of weeks, have lost my mala. I have lost, I have lost my Apple Pencil in a very funny way. And all of it I feel has been in kind of like what I realized it has been just kind of like it's kind of just been Ma kind of laughing at me and playing a joke on me in the in the hopes of me trying to get the concept of this lecture of that it's just Shiva, just you're doing it already. You don't need to worry about doing the puja a certain way, like being so certain about doing the puja a certain
Exactly. Exactly.
when just like you said, just going out. Literally what you said of of, you know, I was supposed to do a puja, but my friend needed me. And I ended up having a very good conversation with my friend. And I ended up being there for them in a way that they really needed them. And to me, that was
Yes.
very fulfilling and for both of us. And that was puja.
Yes.
And like that was something of so much value that like for both of us. And so like that and then and now I realize why I keep losing. I lost my Apple Pencil because that's how I used to sit there and I used to try to write out everything, and I used to write
Yeah.
out everything and all the steps and everything that I needed to do, and how to, and you know, making sure that I did jumpa correctly, and making sure that like all the structure that I was trying to add in. And then I was doing it in
Oh. Samadhi. Just straight to. I don't need anything anymore. I don't need puja. I don't need japa. I don't need this pen. I'm Shiva, and then she just froze. Damn. Okay, hopefully she'll come back. Jai Ma Bom Bholenath. Shambhu took a nice big rip. She's gone.